I'm ready when you are.
Yeah, that's way too. Let's open the meeting of the Boise County Council with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's start the meeting here with the approval of the minutes of our last meeting on February 28th. Is there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Anyone had? Okay. Hearing none, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as proposed for February 28th.
I'll second that.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So first on the agenda here, I think Chelsea, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
If you could come up, maybe introduce yourself for the.
Alright, I'm Chelsea Brewer with Rda Extension, the Health and Human Sciences educator as well as County Extension Director. Formally today I'm here to request a decrease in our rent of $230. And we spoke last time about that. So are there any questions since last time? Do you need me to review it again?
Does anyone have any questions on that? I think it's for a year lease and it's the extra space that we acquired a year ago, I think, isn't it?
It is actually to cover pest control.
Pest control.
Pest control, yes.
Okay, so I think entertain a motion to approve that $230 rent increase. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Who got it? Me and then Becky.
I heard Doug, but I didn't hear Becky, so.
Okay. Informally, I would like to give you guys our annual report. It has been published. I've also tucked in there. Sorry, Becky, you don't get that one. I also tucked in there our local report for the 2021 reporting year, and then a pamphlet on Purdue Fast Start. So I strategically chose to stick those pages for our local reports into a story on Juntos. Do you want one? Did you get one last time?
You gave me one last time.
Oh, okay. Strategically stuck it in the story on Juntos because that is something that we are bringing to Du Bois County. It's actually in full swing. Tonight's the last session at Southwest School District. We had 19 Hispanic families sign up. And what Juntos is a program that they go through a 6-week family engagement course together. They learn all about kind of the school process, what it takes to get to college, resources that are out there to help the students get into college and to pay for it, and what the families can do to be involved in that schooling for the students, both at a high school and college level, because the minimum age is actually 8th grade. But we have whole families there, right? So when I went and helped out, I got to play with a little 3-year-old little boy, and it was a lot of fun. So tonight's our last night of that 6-week series, and then they actually roll into a 4-H program together where these families can stay engaged and participate in 4-H as a group. And it's meant to be a rolling program, so it's something that every year we would have a 6-week session that would feed into the 4-H program. The older families become the mentors to the new families and just become one big community. That's the goal. After we get established at Southwest, we are looking to take it to Jasper. Okay. So that's why I'm stepping on the Juntos page. I thought it's really cool. It's a neat program that we're really excited. And it's being very successful right now. I don't have anything else to talk about unless you guys want to hear anything specifically that we're up to.
the kids went to Du Bois Middle School for a cooking thing. I think you guys put on, it was really good.
Yeah, the
They made a
baking
chicken
spark.
pot pie. and loved it. So good job, well done on that.
Thank you very much. That was Lauren Fenneman, our 4-H educator. She put that together with their FACS teacher there, who is a 4-H leader. And they made cookies and iced them. It was around Valentine's Day. And then they also made a chicken pot pie. So they learned all about baking. And that baking doesn't necessarily mean sweet treats. It can mean dinner. Yeah. Thank you for that, Alex.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. We actually just had our 4-H mini day camp earlier this week that we saw 30 kiddos between kindergarten and 7th grade out at the fairgrounds. So we taught them all about nature. Unfortunately, it was raining for one of the sessions, but one of them, the morning session, they got to go outside and do a little nature scavenger hunt. We talked about flowers and the parts of a flower, and they made a cloud in a jar. If you guys have ever seen that, it's pretty. You spray some hairspray and ice cubes, and it creates fog. So you can talk about sort of the weather cycle and how clouds are created. So we taught them a little bit about weather that day. We also had a partnership with Du Bois REC earlier last Tuesday, and they came out to the fairgrounds and taught 8 kiddos about electricity. And the reviews were going wild about that because they blew up a hot dog. Yeah, that's always fun. So we got a lot of great feedback for that, and Du Bois REC actually wants to make that an annual thing. So we were very happy with that partnership. So things are moving. Good stuff. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? Otherwise, Chelsea, thanks. It seems like everything's going well, so appreciate it.
It is. Things are going much better since that lease. So we appreciate everybody's support in getting that signed.
Glad it's working out well. That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. So next we got Judge McConnell speaking about the courtroom judge. But you can introduce yourself, I appreciate it.
All right. I'm Mark McConnell, Superior Court Judge. The reason I'm here today, and I expected Judge Verkamp to be here, but he must be running late in court.
Well, it's a little early yet, so maybe he's not here yet.
Well, anyway, he'll be here, I'm sure. But the reason that I'm here is to ask for your support for a 3rd court in Du Bois County, to be known as Du Bois Superior Court Number 2. The way it works, if you want to get a new court, is that we have to, there's Judge Verkamp. We have to submit a packet to a study committee that studies the issue in even number of years, and then the legislature votes on it in odd number of years. And so we're wanting to submit a packet sometime in the near future this year, so that committee, interim study committee, can study the matter, and then the legislature will vote next year whether to add a 3rd court to Du Bois County. One of the things that they look at, of course, in doing that is it supported by the community? And part of the community, of course, is the commissioners and the council. And they want to make sure that there's support by the fiscal body in the county. Just to give you background information, I guess, and I think Judge Verkamp talked about some of these things at the council, the commissioners meeting, but he indicated, and I'll have you take one and pass it down. And I guess we should look at the second sheet that we're passing out first. Everybody has one. But as Judge Verkamp indicated last time, we are the largest county in the state to only have 2 judges. And the second sheet that I've handed out there, I took from the Indiana Legal Directory from 2019 to 2020, which was the most recent one that we had. And I took all of the counties with a population between 40 and 50,000, which is where Du Bois County falls. This is, obviously, it shows Du Bois County at the time having a population of 42,565. I think it's a little higher than that at this time, but just kind of to show you relatively speaking. We have 2 judges, and Harrison County has 2 judges. Harrison County is a little bit smaller at 40,350, but every other county that's kind of in the same ballpark with us has at least 3 judges, and some of them, as you can see, have city court judges as well. So, you know, our request of the legislature is going to be to add that 3rd court, more or less to bring us up to speed with some of the other counties around us. The first handout that I passed out indicates the level of need for a judge, a 3rd judge here in Du Bois County. They do what are called weighted caseload studies, and they determine how many judges a particular county needs. And I've basically put down the results for years 2016 through 2020. As you can see, in all of those years, we had 2 judges. In 2016, the weighted caseload study indicated that we needed 2.74 judges. That ranked us 7th in the state as far as need. In other words, of all the counties that needed extra judges or more judges based upon their caseload study, we were 7th. In 2017, the number was 2.82, which put us at the 5th. In 2018, the number was up to 2.93, so very close to 3 judges, put us 3rd in the state as far as need. And out of the 92 counties, we were 3rd. 2019, it went down a bit to 2.58, made us tied for 8th. And then in 2020, it shows a little bit lower. I think that's a bit of an anomaly, I think, due to COVID and things of that nature. But anyway, it's down to 2.32 is what it shows now, but still 8th in the state. We've consistently been in the top 10 as far as need, and the need is for more than 2 judges. As I said, we're here to ask for your support with regard to this, so that when we send the package in, that we can tell them that the fiscal body of the county is in support of our request for a 3rd court. Judge Verkamp, I think, had, when we were in front of the commissioners, they asked us to prepare a proposed resolution. I think he's done that. I don't know if that's been shared with you, but so we're asking for a vote to allow Mr. Gleasner to sign off on that, I guess, after today. I just wanted to comment just a few things. First of all, the commissioners did indicate that they were in favor of the proposal. Judge Verkamp, of course, supports it. I support it. Sheriff Kleinhelter has written a letter in support of it. Our Chief Probation Officer has written a letter in support. Our Community Corrections Director has written a letter in support. And the contractual public defenders from my court have written a letter. There are also surveys that we sent out to local attorneys. We sent them to all of you as well. I think you all got a copy of those surveys. Some of you filled them out, some didn't so much because they didn't really feel like they were familiar with the workings of the court enough to know if we needed another court or not, or to answer particular questions. But the comments to the surveys that we sent out were generally in support. And I have the results of the surveys that I can share with you if you have specific questions about them. One of the questions was, we phrased it in such a way that we asked a question, and then the options were that you could let me see. You could, there were various levels of I agree, disagree, strongly disagree, no opinion, or neutral. In any event, one of the questions was creation of a third court would positively impact our county's judicial caseload. 25 out of 30 respondents either agreed or strongly agreed, with strongly agreed being the number one answer. Another question was creation of a third court would improve the quality of justice in our county. 24 out of 30 either agreed or strongly agreed. Again, strongly agreed was the number one answer. 21 out of 30 that answered agreed that their caseload had increased over the last year and that delays in processing cases or delay in processing cases was a serious or moderate problem. 19 out of 30 said it was a moderate or serious problem. So I think you can see that the surveys were generally in support of the third court as well. There are specific comments that were made also on a lot of those surveys that were also in support of the third court. One of the things that I think we have to consider when talking about a third court is, what's happening in Du Bois County. Du Bois County is continuing to grow. I know some of the surrounding counties are staying the same or getting smaller. Du Bois County is kind of bucking that trend and continues to grow both in population as well as in industry. And, there's clear indications of that. We're building a new jail right now. And we wouldn't be doing that if there wasn't additional need. We're adding on to our community correction center right now. We wouldn't be doing that if there wasn't a need as well. I think we all know as well that even though our population is around 45,000, that it's much more than that during the daytime. There's a lot of people that commute here for work. There are lots of opportunities here for healthcare that don't exist in the surrounding counties. There are lots of opportunities for dining and entertainment and recreation, hotels, things of that nature that surrounding counties just don't have. So even though our population is only about 45,000, we act in many ways like a much bigger county than what we are population-wise. And of course, with that increased number of people comes the need for more infrastructure, and courts are just a part of that. I know there's going to be some discussion tonight about the mid-states corridor. I think if that is built, I know there's people that are for it and people that are against it, but I saw a presentation, or saw on paper, there was a presentation not long ago when they said that there would be further economic boom associated with that, and that if that goes true, there would be an additional 7,000 jobs in Du Bois and Spencer County, and billions of dollars of new industry. So it's only going to continue, I think, if projects like that are approved. Like I said, the decision as to whether or not a third court ultimately is added is really up to the legislature, but your support would go a long way in getting that approved by the legislature. I want to talk a little bit about what's involved in the third court, and the fact that we really are set up very well right now for a third court. First of all, we already have a third courtroom, as you all know. We already have all of our court recording equipment in that third courtroom. So it's not a situation where we have to build another court or remodel anything of that nature. That the the facility is really there. We've been using that for senior judge, special judge, or meeting rooms, things of that nature. The other thing that I think is important to consider is that if we add a third judge, the state pays the salary of that judge. Now, the council has been generous enough to provide a stipend to the judges in the amount of $5,000, and that's been done every year for many years. But the actual salary, primary salary of the judges is paid by the state, so that doesn't cost the county anything. It won't cost the county anything. So the other thing to consider is that with regard to court reporters, we don't really anticipate having to add court reporters. We have right now 11 court reporters. I have 3 in Superior Court. Judge Burkamp has 4 in Circuit Court, and then there are 4 small claims court reporters downstairs here in the annex. What we would do is reallocate those court reporters in such a way that those 11 would cover for the 3 judges. There may be the possibility that you might have to add 1 down the road at some point, but I think we could very easily, for now at least, get by with those 11 court reporters. So I don't think there's a need to add any court reporters or staff. The courtroom that's set up has already ample room for court reporters up there on the 3rd floor, and office equipment as well. We would have to supply computers, of course. Well, I'm not sure we would. I guess we have computers for all 11 of them, so it'd be a matter of maybe just moving them around. So anyway, the expense, I guess what I'm getting at, the expense is minimal. You would have to pay a stipend, and then I think there would be some office expenses, that we would normally have with any office. I guess in my wildest dreams, I can't imagine spending more than $25,000 a year more than what we're spending now for office supplies and paper and equipment and all of that. So in any event, I think we're well set up to do that without a big impact as far as county finances. So what the county, or what the committee, as I said, is looking for is some acknowledgement by the county fiscal body, the council, that there is a funding source, and that the county would support paying the estimated cost of operating a 3rd court. So I'll open it up to questions, or if Judge Burkamp wants to add anything. But again, we've got a resolution drawn up. We're simply asking for your vote in support of that, so that we can finalize this package and get it sent out to the state. Yeah.
Your Honor, I got a question. So, how about the prosecutor's office? Do you think that there will be a need to grow the prosecutor's office because of the 3rd judge?
There's Anthony.
No.
No, I don't think so. I think the prosecutor's office is in pretty good shape personally. They have a good number of prosecutors, I think, for where we are in the county. So I don't know if
Yeah, we've got 5 total prosecutors, so the number of criminal cases won't change. I mean, it may increase, but I mean, it's not gonna change, as far as what we're handling. So I think we're at a level where we're sufficient to handle a 3rd courtroom.
Yeah, that's the thing I guess you have to keep in mind, is that we're not really adding cases. We're adding 1 more judge to handle the cases that we have. So, it just lightens the workload for the judges that are here. And, we have a real difficult time scheduling things. My feeling has always been, if someone files for a divorce, they ought to be able to get in front of the judge for provisional order here within a couple of weeks. The way our schedules are, because we have so many other cases and types of cases, It's just really hard to find, a half an hour or an hour or 2 hours to plug in within a 2-week period to be able to address those things. And it just keeps getting tougher and tougher. We keep setting our jury trials further and further out just because of the caseload. And, one of the things that we pledged was justice for all just a few moments ago. And to me, you can go back to the old adage, justice delayed is justice denied, when we're putting hearings off further than we should be. Things don't get resolved. It puts a burden on the whole system, really, as far as that goes, because if we don't get a defendant to trial in a timely manner, well, he sits in jail that much longer. So the county's paying to house someone in jail because we got to wait an extra month or 2 months to get somebody to trial. You have situations, say in a divorce case, where instead of, provisional order hearings are to kind of decide what's going to happen while this divorce is pending. Every divorce by law has to be pending for at least 60 days. So during that 60-day period, who's going to live in the house? Who's going to have custody of the kids? Who's going to pay what bills? Who's going to pay child support? If we can't get a provisional order hearing set for 45 days, all that's in limbo. And, divorces are tense enough situations as it is. You put somebody in limbo for 45 days, tempers flare, things happen that maybe could be avoided if we could get to some of those hearings, more quickly. So it's just, I think, becomes a disservice to the citizens if these delays get bigger and bigger and bigger as we go. So we're trying to address that before it becomes a real problem.
One hypothetical I thought of, and it may be way out there, but what if Indiana adopted a drug policy like Oregon, and marijuana offenses and a lot of drug offenses were not punishable? Would that lighten the caseload?
I'm not sure how much it would. Obviously, that's an issue for the legislature because they have to decide what the law is. We just apply the law. But I think if it's a situation where there wouldn't be sentences, there still might be fines, so the cases would still have to be processed. So I'm not sure how much time that would save. I mean, maybe there wouldn't be as many trials, so it might save some time in that regard. I don't know, that's maybe another question Anthony might want to weigh in on.
Well, I mean, depending on what your scenario is, I mean, the short answer would be probably yes, somewhat, but I don't foresee that happening here in Indiana.
I don't either. I just, technically it's possible.
So it would be possible.
I mean, if it was legalized completely, yeah, it would make a difference. I mean, if it was a situation where they said you can't get jail time for possession of marijuana, but you can still impose a fine and cost, I think we'd still have to deal with the cases. It might be more like a traffic ticket, you come in and pay it, and maybe it wouldn't take up court time.
I wasn't at the commissioner's meeting, I was watching it. So time frame, let's say things move forward, the legislature talks about it next year, it goes into effect in 24, then there's an election. Is that how the process would work?
What we have to submit a proposal to the interim study committee, the judicial interim study committee. And we have to do that in calendar year 2022. So this year we have to get that to them. So they study it this year and then they make a recommendation to the full legislature and the legislature votes on it next year. So my understanding is even if it would pass the legislature next year, then they would schedule an election. So we probably wouldn't have an election until the following year. So even if we approve it or they approve it, it's probably 2024 before we have a third quarter anyway. Is my understanding of things. So trying to think ahead. It's something that we feel like is we haven't pushed it. We've kind of been riding it out, I guess, for a lot of years. And we're feeling like now's the time that we need to, look forward and do something about it so that in the next couple of years, we'll have the third court. Any other questions?
In your submittal of paperwork to the state, I mean, would you recommend, you're gonna recommend Superior Court 2, is that what you're saying? Which would be an elected position, right? We're not,
Correct.
because I think it would be fair for the citizens of the county
Right.
to be able to have input into that judge.
Yeah.
And the other thing, can you touch on the senior judge? How that operates?
Yeah, if a judge retires, he can ask to be a senior judge or have senior judge status. Basically, if that's approved, and it's approved by the Supreme Court, if you submit an application, the Supreme Court will say either yes or no. But most times they're going to say yes, as long as you're a judge in good standing. And senior judges are there to help in situations where there are conflicts of interest, such as, if say Judge Burkamp, for instance, before he became judge, he was a defense attorney. And there's an individual that he represented that was convicted. Now the prosecutor is asking that person be considered a habitual offender based upon one of those convictions that Judge Burkamp represented that defendant on. Judge Burkamp can't sit on that case. So he has to appoint a special judge. Now generally, we appoint each other as special judges, but if we're not available to do it, if we have a conflict as well, then we appoint a senior judge or a special judge from another county. Special judges are not tied to any particular county. They can go anywhere and work in any court. It's a matter of need and that court requesting a senior judge. We're fortunate in one sense that Judge Weichert is a senior judge, and he has helped in some of the civil matters before our courts. However, Judge Weichert has conflict with regard to any criminal cases in Du Bois County because Anthony is his nephew. So the elected prosecutor, being his nephew, he can't sit on those criminal cases. So we're at a disadvantage to some extent there. He's not assigned to us, though. We could ask for another senior judge from another place to come in and hear some of those cases, and we do that. And we ask for some special judges too from other counties. But in any event, Judge Weichert, even though he's a resource on civil cases, he spends most of his time in other counties other than here. So it's not really helping with our caseload that much. If we had a different situation, or had a senior judge, that was closer or whatever, maybe we could take advantage of that. But, there are only so many to go around, and each court is permitted so many days of senior judge help. So, I don't know if there's any specific questions you have about that.
No, I think it's just how it worked.
Yeah, and it's not a situation where, we can appoint any senior judge to a particular case, as far as that goes, but we can't hire or fire, so to speak. They're appointed by the Supreme Court to basically to help out where they can.
And I was seeing with the use of the third courtroom, if we get another judge and would we have enough courtrooms there then?
Yeah, I don't think it would create that big of a problem. First of all, I think if you have three active judges, I think then you're going to have a little more time in the schedules where if we have a senior judge he could use, for instance, he could use my courtroom or Judge Burkamp's courtroom. The other thing is, even if we have a third judge, that doesn't mean the courtroom's going to be in use all of the time. Just depending on how we allocate the cases, that third judge may not do as much courtroom work, for instance, depending on what kind of caseload allocation there is.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, I'll sit down unless anybody else wants to say anything.
Judge Burkamp, you want to add anything to it, or think you?
Judge McConnell touched on it well, and it's more than just really being, we can be in court. I'm in court. I start my morning right away at 8 o'clock. And with constraints and chins and delinquencies, they have to have, not only a provisional has to have a hearing within a certain period of time, but there's really tight constraints with respect to chins, terminations, and delinquencies. So what we've been finding ourselves is no time in our calendar. I think I told the commissioners the first full day, if you needed a divorce, you need a full day on my calendar right now here at the end of June. And that's second set to a jury trial. So if that jury trial goes, you've waited 3-4 months to get a hearing, now all of a sudden you're bumped off the calendar for another 3 or 4 months. And that's what Judge McConnell's talking about, the justice delay. It really becomes problematic. So what we've been doing for our fact-finding hearings and delinquencies and chins, we set them at 3:30 in the evening because I have to have them done. By law, they have to be done within a certain period of time. So we're going late into the evening, usually on Tuesday nights, to try to get these things done. And what you don't have then is time during the day. So you hear an all-day divorce one day, the next day you hear another all-day hearing, and then you have a criminal docket, chins docket, and estates and probate and all the other things that go along with that. Well, that's why I'm here every weekend, here late, because we're working a lot of extra hours, after hours, and sometimes it's nicer to get things done when the phone's not ringing anyway. You don't get interrupted. But there's a lot of things that if we had the time, we really, our local rules could be reviewed. One of the things near and dear to my heart would be a regional veterans court. It's kind of like the drug court, problem-solving court for veterans or for mental health. But there's just absolutely no time for us to even explore that option at this point. So we're just asking for your support.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Okay. If no other questions, I'll entertain a motion either to disapprove or approve the resolution.
It's a joint resolution number 2022-3 between the it's of the DuBois County Board of Commissioners and the DuBois County Council supporting the addition of a judicial officer.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
You got a first and a second. So, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So, thanks for your time and thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Jen hasn't seen it, but I wasn't prepared for you.
Okay, we're running a little late, but next thing is the mid-states quarter, so Bill Kaiser. Mark, I don't know if you're going to speak, but if you could introduce yourself.
I'm gonna set it over here, I think. Good evening. PC is gonna do most of the talking, Bill, well, this forward. So to make sure that it's easier to pick up with a fire. Mark, you can start. What's that? You said you can start. You want to start there? Yeah.
Why don't you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mark Schrader and Bill Kaiser with the Mid-States Corridor Regional Development Program. So, well, first of all, I'd just like to thank you to give us the opportunity to come back and just give you an update as to the RDA and where things stand relative to the Tier 1 study that has been going on, it seems like forever in the process. And, also wanted to give you a little bit of a timeline around the formation of the RDA. The RDA, as you may recall, was formed back in 2017, and interlocal agreements between Du Bois County, Spencer County, City of Jasper, City of Huntingburg were signed in 2018. And the RDA board was also appointed, I believe, Bill, in 2018. And that board is made up of 5 board members, myself, Sue Elsperman, Scott Blasey, David Drake from here in Du Bois County, and Ken Moser from Spencer County. And in 2018, the RDA also entered into a memorandum of understanding with NDOT to basically proceed with the process of conducting a Tier 1 study. And that contract for that Tier 1 study was then signed with the Lockman Group in 2019. The initial completion date for that Tier 1 study was scheduled to be June in 2021. And that completion date now is late this year, early next year. But we want to come back and talk a little bit more also about the delay in the study, and it was both due to COVID and more recently the work that was involved in making certain that that Tier 1 study includes the proposed improvements to US 231. And so those two things really have delayed the process. So Bill, I don't know if you want to.
Well, I would just say this as a matter of a refresher that this all came about because of logistical questions on a north-south, 231 piecing that we were having traffic congestion. Du Bois County in particular has a high amount of traffic on 231, which is not structured to handle. I mean, there are as many cars sometimes on parts of Du Bois County as there are on Interstate 64 and Interstate 69. NDOT has recognized that question, but they weren't moving forward. So locally, when the RDA was formed, the idea was to fund a study to determine what could possibly be done to handle the traffic that is currently on 231 and going forward, what's the possibility. So what NDOT told us is if you're ready to fund for that, we would go forward. And that's what the MOU said, is that we would raise those funds locally. And that $6.5 million cost for that study was raised by Du Bois County. You all funded part of that money. The City of Jasper and the City of Huntingburg funded that money. That money gets paid to NDOT. NDOT hires Lockmuller to actually do this NEPA Tier 1 study. We know that that study could be for range of doing nothing, that there's nothing to be done. The roadway you have is fine, to improving the existing roadway, to potentially some new terrain, or an all new terrain. That's what we'll find out at some point. As Mark mentioned, we are coming back because we owe you an update about where things are. You're a member organization of the RDA and also a partner in the funding of this study to determine, but we're also getting very close. So this April, we are expecting at least the initial recommendation from the Lockmuller Group through NDOT of what that route will be. So we wanted to kind of review that with you a little bit about where it was, and then also show you some of these pieces. Back to the question, initially when we started out, when they started this study, there were 10 potential routes, 28 different alternatives. That got whittled down to 5 potential routes with 10 alternatives. And that's where we are. So sometime in April, we are expecting a recommendation of one route, one alternative. That route will then be subject to at least 2 public hearings, in the area, public comment. And even though the state and federal agencies have been working together as the study's been going forward under Lockmuller Group, after the route is recommended and the public comments happen, those comments will be both from citizens, from business organizations, from community organizations, cities, towns, counties, engineers, anybody who's affected can make comments, but also state and federal organizations will be able to comment on the route recommendation. Lockmuir's obligation is to take approximately 6 months to run through all those comments, to assimilate those comments, discuss those comments, and respond to those comments. And then to make a determination as to what its recommendation, final recommendation is, and how that recommendation, which was initially made in April, is adjusted in any way, shape, or form to accommodate those comments by the end. So when Mark mentioned we're expecting a completion date for the tier 1, that's dependent upon that comment period, how long it takes to put those comments together. What we're told is generally on this kind of process, it's about a 6-month time frame. So that puts us into the fall of 2022. Just to refresh your memory about where we were going. I can do all these in here at one time, maybe. So the route, is a route that's running from the Ohio River up 231, that was being studied up 231 through Spencer County. This is that through the piece, so it's being studied, and you can see where it starts here at the Ohio River, back up 231 through Spencer County, till it hits Interstate 64. Once it hits Interstate 64, where there were 10 different options and 10 different routes, now we're down to these 5 routes, potential routes, the 10 alternatives. So you can see the routes that are going west, a route that would run up potentially 231, and then these 2 easterly routes that are potentially, hitting up, eventually hitting 69. And so those are the 5 routes that are currently under study, one of which routes we expect to be recommended by the Lockmuir group. Again, this is just a little more of a focus in on the routes, that we're either going around Huntingburg or Jasper to the east or to the west, and how that looks. Again, these are very large, swaths of property. These routes are. Ultimately, these routes, the chosen route, will be approximately 300 feet. Not 2,000 feet. So that's something that'll happen in the future. So you can just see these 2 routes going out, and then depending on the selection, there's also looking at the routes that are going easterly and what those would look like, either following existing roadways, through French Lick up to 37 and going up to hit 69, or back to the question. These have designations on them as to whether they be expressway or freeway. These were prepared by the Lockmuir group. One of the things that you should be clear about in that is that even though a route recommendation will happen, there is going to be no selection of a type of roadway. And what NDOT has decided is that depending on what route gets selected, that at some point during a potential tier 2 process, they would actually select the type of roadway, which means the roadway that is in existence, say for Spencer County, may stay the same. The type of roadway that goes through parts of Du Bois County may be different. The parts that go through Orange County or Martin County or towards Davies County could be different too. So different sections of this roadway could be different types of roadway, whether it's a Super 2 or divided roadway or remains the same as it is. That's yet to be decided at some point. We did have a handout that we're in some ways continuing to recycle, just so it shows some pieces. So that kind of which reiterates a little bit of what I'm saying, this just to kind of flip through with you on a couple pages. And part of this is information on the overview of the project. We turn to page 2 about the screening of the project, identifying 28 options and 10 routes down to 10 and 5, soon to be 1. And then there's a map for you, the map we just showed you of the 5 current routes, so you can take those with you. And then there's some other information, as you might also expect, besides the research that Lockmuir is doing, looking at the different factors for the roadway itself. There were a couple studies that were performed by other groups that are interested in this roadway that are available for the public. There was a report locally that was done by Du Bois Strong, the Hunden Group, for the impact on Du Bois and Spencer County. Orange County did a study of itself for Orange and Lawrence County, the Genovis Group. Davies County has been studying the impact to Davies County. So there are a number of pieces, if you look through here, about what the roadway could mean to this area. And those reports in full are available online at Du Bois Strong and the North County Economic Development piece. Look at that. But this roadway is identified to have a strong economic impact. And so besides the other things going through, if you look at the very last page, and that's just the idea, this is kind of the next steps that we're expecting the draft EIS to happen in April. So that April report, it will make this preferred alternative corridor, which could be the same road we have right now. It could be a different road. It could be one of these options. We'll see what that option is. There'll be public hearings after that to accommodate. We expect a large number of people to comment on whatever the recommended route would be. And the comment period will run for a period of time. The comments will then be assimilated in and understood with Lockmuller. And sometime in the fourth quarter, probably late in the fourth quarter, given the way these things have run, we'll see a final EIS. That final EIS then will be the jumping off point to what happens next. And what happens next, meaning that, is there improvements, changes, roadway to be constructed or to be improved or changed? I mean, that's all subject to a tier 2 study. This is a tier 1 study. So a tier 2 study would take a section of the proposed route and determine what, if any, improvements or changes need to be made to that part of the route. Tier 2 is subject to funding. So, the RDA, through its member organizations, funded this first $6.5 million to try to determine how this was going to happen. Tier 2 will be separate funding. On a roadway project like this, the expectation is that there's funding that will happen through the state and federal pieces, depending on if you're talking about improvements to a road or a new roadway. We don't know the answer to that question yet. So after the route recommendation happens, we'll probably come back and have a conversation. They'll be with you about what the route recommendation is, what the possibilities might mean to Du Bois County and the surrounding counties that would be impacted by where that route runs through.
And make a couple points around the RDA. I always try to make certain that we clarify what the RDA's role has been and what will be on a go-forward basis. The board members, the 5 board members run the RDA, but what we're doing there is, we believe, following the guidance that we received from the governmental entities when the RDA was formed. And because of that, always make sure everybody understands the RDA has never been a proponent for a particular route or a particular facility type, because that's what the study is about. What we have been a proponent for is improved connectivity, north-south connectivity, connecting 64 with 69 and improved connectivity. We are a party to this study, but Lockmuller and Federal Highway have very strict guidelines of what the way that group that is doing the study, and it was chosen to be Lockmuller, but how they were chosen, and the rules that they live under. And so as the RDA, there's some other groups that are advocating for or against Mid-States Corridor, and that is their right and probably what they should be doing at that point. But the RDA has not, we stay neutral on this, and we will stay neutral. Now, once a preferred route is announced, we'll pivot. At that point, we will become a proponent for whatever that preferred route would be. And as Bill said, thankfully, we're very close, I think, to learning what that will be.
Yeah, up to this point, I mean, we've been pushing Lockmuller, and been kind of the eyes and ears back and forth with NDOT as things have come up, about moving this forward or not moving it forward and how that's looked. But really, very little information about, especially in the last, part of this as they've kind of, moved forward with digesting their information and putting it together. So just as you were, and like the public, we're just as anxious as anybody to understand, where this is going to happen and what the ultimate recommendation is going to be. It's been very hard for them to, I think in the sense that COVID, kind of shut things down, and the state of Indiana shut down, and they required their contractors to shut down the same way. And then as federal highway and other places were shut down, they couldn't even have interagency meetings. So they said I think they did as much as they could in the interim. I will say that, so you're clear that did require additional cost on behalf of the project. But to Chairman Schrader's good negotiating, NDOT agreed to take up that cost. So even though there were additional costs incurred and being incurred, NDOT has agreed, given the uniqueness of the relationship. This is a one-of-a-kind project. This is not going on anywhere else in the sense that no other local private group, agency, cooperative group has stepped forward to say, we have a traffic congestion problem, we have a difficulty, how do we fix the problem, and then try to address the problem. So NDOT's looked very favorably on our self-help to try to identify what the problem is specifically and how it can be fixed. And so, you were anxious to see, what the result of this study is and what the proposal is to address or fix the problem on 231.
I'll add to what Bill said. NDOT has been very supportive. I think NDOT sees this three-way partnership of a local RDA, the state of Indiana, and federal highway as a way to the future. And this is the first one, and at this point, the only one that is kind of exploring and using this RDA vehicle to facilitate something such as this.
As you might expect, NDOT is always working on roads, right? Our roads are getting fixed all the time, and our county is working to improve our roadways. These kinds of bigger projects, though, the difficulty is to take the time to study. There just aren't funds to do it. I think NDOT has said is that, hey, look, we recognize, particularly now, after having been participating in this study, that 231 has issues and problems and questions that need to be addressed. They've already started seeing things that they can do to address those problems and issues. In fact, the governor agreed, right? The governor granted $75 million to start working on those problems and issues for 231. No matter what happens to the roadway, depending on where the route is and what happens, we're still always going to have a 231 running through Jasper down to Huntingburg through Huntingburg, right? So most of us will continue to travel back and forth between Jasper and Huntingburg or north on 231. So the importance to continue to make sure that roadway is improved and is as safe and as uncongested is important. And that will continue. Whether or not we need additional roadway or help or expanded roadway, we'll find out when the Tier 1 study draft happens in April. I'm here to answer any questions. Yeah.
How do you see them rolling it out in next April or this April?
Well, yeah, that's also part of the interesting piece.
Okay.
The difficulty is that this is part, this, because of the potential expense and cost of this project, what NDOT said is that you have to do this federally mandated EIS NEPA study. That's why it's taken almost 3 years now and cost so much. Because if you're going to use federal funds, and remember, we don't have, the state has funds, the state maintaining its roads, but if you're going to build or change or dramatically do something, it's going to take federal funding. So that's why this whole process has been under the federal guidelines, this piece that we're doing and having this contractor do these pieces through NDOT. That also means that this final draft, when it gets recorded, has to go through the Federal Register, which is all federal projects, right? And there's a very specific process that takes maybe up to 2 weeks to get it on the register. So at some point, after Federal Highway finally approves all the changes or issues with the draft report, it'll have to get put into the Federal Register. So NDOT, a lot of them work through that piece. So Craig, to your question, they will coordinate when it comes back and it's ready for Federal Register, coordinate to the Federal Register, then the Federal Register will get published. And my understanding is that there'll be some coordination with Lockmuller and NDOT and the RDA saying, oh, by the way, it's gonna get published on X date, it'll be released. So, what we think is that they'll tell us, when it's gonna get put into the Federal Register and when the Federal Register is gonna get put in. So we don't know exactly that date. I'm not sure they know it yet either.
It is under final review with Federal Highway currently. I mean, that's the process. Lockmiller drafts reports, NDOT basically reviews it, suggests changes, and then the final step is Federal Highway reviews the draft report and suggests and make changes. And that's where they're at now. It is a federal agency.
Sure.
So that's why the timing is such. But they're pretty comfortable. They've got it out on the website for the Lockmiller Resident Project that they're expecting that announcement in that Federal Register filing will happen in April.
I mean, they promised us dates before, they said, hey, it's gonna be this date and that date. I think now they're just saying April, right? So I don't think they really can pinpoint exactly when the Federal Highway Department returns it back to them and then how they actually, work through the process of getting it onto the Federal Register.
And as Bill said, again, the federal highway standards are, they will then have to schedule public hearings where the public can come and comment. There'll be multiple ways for the public to comment on whatever that recommended route might be. Again, as Bill said, it could be the existing 231 or some variation of these.
And I don't know if, this is back to the same question is, we've asked NDOT that piece, how are you gonna take all these comments in? And, they're working through those questions with Lockmiller. I think they will allow, they've had updates before information wise. So I think through their website, through written submittals, through public hearings, they'll be working through to take all that comment in. Again, comments from citizens, comments from concerned groups, comments from cities, towns, counties, corporations, businesses, farmers, a lot of folks.
But we appreciate very much the county's support from the RDA perspective. The RDA wouldn't be there if the county hadn't been supportive of that and participated in funding. We wouldn't be where we're at. That $75 million of proposed improvements wouldn't have happened without this study. The governor has told us that.
Yeah, right. I think it's the first step in recognizing that 231 does have some heavy congestion issues that need to be addressed. And back to the question is, there's not enough money to go around, right? And we've been told pretty clearly that projects get approved at NDOT and then you sit in the queue for generally 6 years until your project rises to the top for us being in the Vincennes district to get addressed. And if it's a very expensive project, it may take longer because it's not only, it's at the top, but it's got to be funded. So our hope and expectation is that we are moving our 231 congestion issue further up the line. And I think the granting of the $75 million is that first, the recognition that, yes, you have a problem and we're going to put money, to help address those problems.
Sooner rather than later.
Sooner rather than later.
Can you speculate, on the tier two? Let's say, is that a 6-year process too, or is that
Well, I think, Mike, the biggest question for that will be funding, right? And at least, again, we're somewhat novices of this, Chris, but when we talk to the experts tell us that, a tier 2 study could be just as expensive as your tier 1 study. So we spent $6.5 million, it could be a $6.5 million again for a tier 2 study. They've also told us that a tier 2 study can be, one section of this road. So is it the section that goes through Spencer County, or is it a section that goes through DuBois County or part of DuBois County? Is it the existing roadway in DuBois County? Where does the road go? What's the route going to be recommended? How does that look? So, but it's going to take, a similar time frame, that says that's when the engineering gets done about, where the road is actually going to go, what kind of road is it going to be, and what are the factors, right? So then they start really deciding about that roadway piece. So, but they won't start that without funding.
And narrowing that, I think what originally was 2 miles and then 2,000 feet down to that 300 to 500 feet.
Yeah.
So then they have to do the study, do the land for, if they have.
They would do land acquisition, all those
So
kinds of
you're
things.
talking, that's what I was trying to get,
How
many years
that
we look at that.
The study itself, they have said, is probably 2 years.
Yeah.
Each individual tier 1, tier 2 study would be about a 2-year process.
The question is how many tier 2 studies you have. And then the second part of that question is, do you have the funding, right? I mean, that's the other concern of that, is that what they don't want to do is that is do a study and then like your funding doesn't come for 6 years, right?
Right.
That time your study's outdated, then what do you do to get back to the question? So we understand, generally don't allow that tier 2 study to go forward without some funding.
And federal highway, one of federal highway's requirements of the state is that they have fiscal constraint. In other words, that they made a commitment on the funding for that section before federal highway will actually make a decision, or record a decision on that. So, yeah. So this is the first step.
Complicated.
I'll say
First
one-
step in a long journey.
And one other thing, Mike, let's be clear, if we're talking about approving 231, we already have 231, right? So the question is, you could start making improvements on 231 if that was the recommendation versus, say, new terrain or some part of that was going to deviate from pieces. That's the other question is, what does the route recommendation look like to know what the tier 2 study really looks like?
Are either of you two guys familiar with the Indiana corridor that was in northern Indiana?
No.
So about probably 10 years ago, they were going to run a new connect interstates 55 to 65, and it made it all the way through the federal highway. It was approved, but they did a cost benefit analysis after federal highway approved it, and didn't see the benefit that they thought they would. I just wondered if you thought maybe that was a little embellished in what your projected revenue and jobs report.
Those aren't our projections.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Du Bois Strong did that. Du Bois Strong did that report. Same way with Orange County, the report back to the piece of it. We don't know, right? That's the question about what happens. And nobody knows yet about what the cost of the roadway is either. So I think because nobody knows where the road is or if there is a new road. Back to the question. So it's very preliminary. To your point, it's very preliminary.
And Alex, I'd add to what Bill said is that NDOT and the Lockman Group have been very clear. Again, those were comments, so they consider them, but they've done their own analysis following Federal Highways rules on costs, benefits. They don't take the pros or the cons at face value. They consider them, but they've done their own analysis.
What I learned from studying that is you can get all the way through federal and the road can still not happen.
That's right.
So it's not a done deal.
Not a done deal.
That's right.
100%. We would agree with you. There's a lot of
The Lake County Council, if you look this road up, they rescinded, they changed their opinion and they didn't support it anymore. So, right.
No, we're not even, I guess really the question is, we're not even up to the first next step until we see the route and what it looks like and what NDOT and Lockmuir are proposing as possibilities. So.
Anyone else? Thanks for coming.
No, thank you for taking the time allowing us to make that update. And hopefully we have additional information for you in April.
Big month, next month.
Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Yes.
Is there an opportunity here to address the council with prepared statement in regards to this stage or at the end?
Is it just one person or is it?
Yeah, it's just me.
Yeah, I think we'll take the time. I think that
Just take 2 minutes.
2 or 3 minutes, I think you have. Would like to. Yeah. What?
Did you vote for Jasper?
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're doing better for
All right. Well, good evening. Again, my name is Mark Nowatarski, and I'm with the Coalition Against the Mid-States Corridor. We're a group that includes well over 7,000 signatures against the proposed project, with several organizations that include the Hoosier Environmental Council, the Indiana Forest Alliance, the Indiana chapter of the Sierra Club, the Indiana Karst Conservative, the Environmental Law and Policy Center, Orangeville Rise, and others, along with several businesses. Personally, I wish I was here when the RDA was first formed and came to you when they were asking to donate money for this study. The process, unfortunately, the way it was set up, did not allow for any input from residents prior to allowing a study to go through. So it's a process that is just, in our minds, wrong. So the sales pitch that talked about all the economic benefits, it would bring without supporting facts. So comment was made about the economic study that was done by Du Bois Strong. I've gone through that, it's 217 pages. I have an 11-page rebuttal report on all of the misinformation in there and all of the projections and the estimates that have no supporting data to it. So if you'd like to see that sometime I would share it with you. Why we can't do anything to change what's happened. Over the past couple of years, the coalition has tried to reach out to the governor, the commissioner of NDOT, key political leaders, and the Secretary of Transportation, along with the Federal Highway Administration, for securing face-to-face meetings with us. And all we get is very little success. In fact, the only face-to-face meetings we've had are with project managers from NDOT, and they always say the same message. We just have to wait till the results of the study. In the meantime, it's been very apparent that the RDA has met with legislators, the governor, and NDOT for what members of the RDA have stated with other councils. It has been a process where key people and donors of the study have definitely an unfair advantage and influence over the process and study, even though Lockmuir or NDOT will try to say otherwise. So sometime by mid-April, NDOT is supposed to announce the outcome of the study. Whatever is determined, if it's not a no-bill decision or simply improvements to 231, the next step after public comment period will be to go to a Tier 2 study for the preferred recommended route. At that time, the RDA will most likely be coming back to the council for more funding. The Coalition Against the Mid-States Corridor is asking council at that time to please educate yourself on all of the facts and what the negative impacts will be for the farmers, the displaced homes, the small businesses, the environment, the climate issues, and the future costs that haven't even been considered for maintaining a new terrain highway, like ongoing maintenance and police patrol, just to name a couple. While the RTA will reference the economic development study done for Du Bois County, again, it is filled with many flaws and inaccurate projections and statements. There are studies that have shown how small and mid-sized towns like ours suffer when a bypass terrain is put in around them, while there have been no results ever shown of a study of the economic development that's been promised and if it's actually become true. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your comments. Good job. So next on the agenda here is additional appropriations and salary orders for Megan. Any corrections?
How's it going? Good. Okay, I think the first item on your agenda is for the Community Corrections CTP account. That is our Community Transition Program fund. That fund, we receive funding through the state of Indiana, Department of Correction, when we house a participant as they're finishing the tail end of a prison sentence. So whenever we house those individuals in either work release or home detention, they give us a daily per diem. So that's how that fund gets its money. Today, my request is, after having been through my Community Corrections Advisory Board, we have requested to appropriate $45,000 for a vehicle purchase, and then also $10,000 for vehicle supplies, which will include gas and repair for our vehicles. Typically, that $10,000 is appropriated out of our project income fund, but this year we had about a $10,000 increase in our project income budget because our project income is our user fees from our participants, and that supports our raises annually. So I decided to move it out of project income for the year and put it into our CTP. The vehicle supplies of $10,000 has already been approved by the board and by the state, the community correction, or I'm sorry, the Department of Correction budget. So this is just the request to be able to use the funds that we have already in that account. And then the vehicle purchase is the $45,000. We have not for sure decided on a vehicle, and the permission to purchase the vehicle with the commissioners has not happened yet. I'm on their agenda for their next meeting, but wanting to be able to get that started. With a vehicle, we do have one Charger right now that our field officers use, and then we have a Dodge Journey that is on its last leg. We're hoping to use as a trade-in. But I don't know if we'll get much out of it because it's really, really on its last leg. We don't take it outside of town usually because it won't go out. And then we have our van for road crew, which is not super conducive for our field visits whenever our home detention field officers go out into the field to check on our home detention participants. So
just to be clear, this $45,000 is to replace the Journey.
it is to replace the Journey.
It's not a new vehicle, it's just to replace an existing.
Thank you.
And the Journey was from the sheriff's department.
Gotcha.
To them, it wasn't new to her.
Yeah. It was passed down.
So Megan, how does it tie in with the CTP fund?
That's the fund that I'm intending to use.
And you're allowed to do that?
The advisory board approved for me to request that from you all, the approval.
But the state says it's okay.
That'll be the next step. I have to get like 3 levels of approval to use our funds, so yeah.
I'm assuming it would be approved. I mean, if you're using it for field office
Yeah.
visits for the people.
Well, our DOC grant, they typically don't allow us to use our DOC grant to purchase vehicles. So it's either project income or CTP. Those are really our only 2 options to do that. And yes, I mean, there are compliance standards for the expectation that we'll be doing field contact visits. So, I mean, it's just part of running a home detention program. We have to make sure we're doing that.
Cindy, is that on 2 different ones?
I have it on 2 different ones because they're 2 different, one's supplies, one's capital outlay.
Any other questions, comments about that new vehicle? I mean, my only comment was, and I think you answered it, I was thinking if it was a new addition, which, I'm concerned, can you continue to carry on that vehicle? But if it's a replacement vehicle, it makes a lot of difference there because of, the additional liability insurance and insurance on the vehicle. So I would, I don't think I have any other comments. So I think I'll entertain a motion to approve the supplies for $10,000 first.
I'll make that motion.
Craig and Becky seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the second one is the capital outlay for the vehicle for $45,000. I'll entertain a motion to accept that.
So moved.
Charmaine made the motion. I have a second.
Okay.
Sonia seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so.
I think the next item on the agenda is our COSAP grant. This is the Community Opioid Stimulant and Substance Abuse Program. Community Corrections received a $600,000 federal grant to start a therapeutic community in our work release program. So this will give our participants the opportunity to come into our program, spend their first 4 weeks to maybe 60 days. We're not entirely sure on the duration of that first period, where they're going to just be able to spend time in the facility, get treatment, get assessment, figure out a good case plan, and work on some of the foundational things that they'll need to work on to be able to not just obtain employment, because obtaining employment in DuBois County is not typically the issue, it's about maintaining employment. So wanting to build skills with them to remain sober, and what makes a good employee. So our intent is to build a program in our work release that would be an intensive program before our participants would even start going to work. The federal grant also includes funding for transitional housing, which you see. Do they have a copy of the budget that you've done?
Well, I'm trying to figure this out here. I've got papers everywhere.
It does include transitional housing for our participants, so as they're transitioning out of our program, they would have the opportunity to potentially go to next steps, potentially, or Dove Recovery, House for Women. And this grant could potentially go toward contracted beds, or it could go toward like a per diem, a daily rate for our participants as they transition into their recovery housing. It includes some project evaluation with federal grant. I've never done one before. This is my first one. So there's a lot of reporting requirements, financial, programmatic data that the consultant will help us with. So that's also built into the budget. And then there's also a project manager. So with that project manager, it would be one full-time position for as long as the grant is in existence. The project manager would really take on the development of the project, from policy to securing contracts to implementation to building the curriculum, in partnership, of course, with our justice partners. So the project manager will really just be that forefront and face of the COSAC program as we get it up and off of the ground and running, so that we can meet all the federal requirements.
What's the length of the grant right now?
This is a 3-year grant.
I put on the additional appropriation sheet, I put what budget you had for year one.
Okay, perfect. So the year one budget, as I said, does include that project manager. It includes a grantee meeting, which is going to be an annual meeting, I think in DC. I don't know if it's actually planned yet, but that's something that we have to go to as a requirement of getting the grant. And then the behavioral health services, which would be the actual services, the treatment services in the work release program, and then the housing fees. So it's going to essentially pay for their user fees while they're in the program, so that they don't have to pay, right? So because initially they start paying $100 a week to be in our work release program. This will kind of take the burden off of the participants so that they don't have to get employment right away, and their user fees will be covered during the time that they're getting the treatment they need. We're super excited about this program, and I think that it's going to be a game changer for our community.
How many participants will be allowed in?
My goal is 50 a year.
Wow, that's great.
That's my goal.
Does it also help then from looking at the indigent side of things?
That's exactly what it's intended to do, is kind of alleviate that backlog of, okay, I'm in work release for 3 weeks before I even get my first paycheck, you know? It's really designed to alleviate kind of that financial barrier that's sometimes created too. That piece of this grant anyways.
Well, I sit on the board of Next Step, and this is, wow, this changes our view a little bit too. I mean, just based on the information.
Yeah.
You're saying.
Yeah.
So, wow, fantastic. Okay.
Good for you, Megan.
Great.
Thank you. I'm actually really proud of this. I'm very proud of it.
So it's a federal grant.
Yes.
It's interesting. I mean, is this like the first time they put all this together to offer, or has it
There
been
have
out there?
been, it was previously called the COAP, COAP. It was specific to opiates, but what they found, of course, was a lot of our rural communities are still dealing with stimulants and other drugs too, not just opiates. So they expanded it to that, stimulants and just substance use in general recently. We applied for it last year and didn't get it, but then we kind of revamped our application, and then whenever they saw us apply again, I think that it
Good for you.
piqued their interest.
So this, project manager, I don't have a weekly or bi-weekly salary or anything like that.
The biweekly salary would be $1807.40. $25.82 per hour. It's a PAT 4, and it falls within the approved wage range. Although I haven't gotten the actual job description or position created just yet by the county commissioners. As I said, I'm going to them for that in their next meeting.
Okay, so I have on the budget, the salary, the insurance, the FICA, and the PERF is $66,552 for personal services. So that's one of the additionals I'll need.
Does everyone understand this, or any questions, or otherwise I'll entertain a motion for $66,552 for personal services under this grant.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Craig, any motion? Becky, seconded. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
We'll kind of go through these just one as I have them here.
This is great.
So that should be the first 4 things on that list.
Yeah, this is a separate issue, so we talk about that.
So then you said 1,807.40, right?
1807.40.
By week.
It's,
I'm so sorry. Yes, $1807.40. I'm laughing over here.
And Pat. Okay, because I have an amendment to the salary ordinance for that position.
Do you want to take that up first and then go with the other services?
We can do it after.
I
We
mean,
can, I mean, it's totally up to you.
no, I mean, we might as well do it now, so it makes sense here. So the next one would be other services for
I have $3,150 for, I don't have it in order here, do I? Yeah, grantee meetings.
okay, so you're gonna take each one of these individually?
She made them individual for me.
Okay, so $3,150 for grantee meetings. So
I'll make the motion.
Tremaine made a motion to approve that, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Becky seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
The behavioral health services, that's probably contracts.
Yes. And there's a whole other process I'm gonna have to work through with that too, of course, getting, like RFPs and stuff like that.
Gotcha. The next one I have is the 40,000 behavioral services, yes.
I move that we approve the 40,000.
Okay. So Charmaine made a motion to approve it, have a second? Alex seconded. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Next one I have is the other costs for 49,000.
Can you explain that a little bit more, the other costs?
Yeah, well, so 15,000 is for project consultation and evaluation. So that's the consulting piece that I was speaking of, and then the evaluation, of course. The data collection of how is this program improving outcomes or not improving outcomes. It's just the collection of the data. So that 15,000 is for that project consultation and evaluation. And then we weren't really sure how to allocate that 34,000. It's just other, because 34,000 of it is that weekly fee times the number of people that we're gonna see in a year. And so I'll have to bill the grant somehow, and then we'll have to apply it to their project income fees and fees. So it's just other user fees.
Do we have the office fixed for this? For this person?
Not yet.
Okay. Is it coming though? Is that part of
Well, I feel like
the,
that's part of our expansion. We're gonna
Okay,
have
good. All
offices.
All right. Fantastic.
So
I'm gonna be full though before the expansion's even over.
Build on.
I guess we're gonna have to expand again.
before it's built, expand before it's built.
Sounds like a school system.
A what?
Sounds like a school system that's in the county.
I love school, so.
I'll make a motion tonight for the 49,000.
I've made a motion to approve the 49,000 for other calls. Second,
I'll second.
Becky seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
You'll find a spot.
I'll find a spot. Yeah. We'll divide offices in half or whatever we gotta do. The next is the JRAC project manager.
We got a salary ordinance.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Did you ever get an email from them? I set up those,
Yeah.
but I have never gotten an email, so.
Is this person hired already?
No,
And someone in mind?
no.
She's just, from what I understood earlier, you're just securing the funding and going to the commissioners in 2 weeks to
Yeah.
approve the position.
Yes, yeah, I didn't want to advertise for it before it's been officially approved by the commissioners. But we need to get a move on it. Do you have somebody in mind?
No, I was thinking of the construction out there, I mean, it's gonna,
Yeah,
it'll be tight for a little while here, but I guess you could put some money in.
they'll have to share an office with our treatment program facilitators.
When we move everybody here
Yeah.
in the middle of the summer here, then you'll have to find a place.
They will have to share an office.
Slight inconvenience.
It's like,
Sure.
but I've got to get started, we have the money. And we've got people with needs, so.
To figure something.
So this-
Salary ordinance 1,807.40 bi-weekly.
so I'll make a motion, we approve that salary ordinance. Second,
I'll second.
Becky seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So would that be it, Sandy, for that grant?
I think that's it for the COSAC.
Okay, so you want to continue that?
Would you like to speak on JRAC, Anthony, or would you like me to?
You're on a roll. You're like butter.
He took one for the team for the commissioners meeting, so I'll move it.
You did a good job too.
Good, so you were there, good. You were there too? Good.
I watched it.
Okay, so I really don't have to say a whole lot, right?
See?
Well, there's other four. There's four.
So JRAC stands for Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council. And there was legislation from the state that required all counties to create this JRAC. And all of us are on that. Alex is on that. Chad Lessing is our commissioner representation. And then there's also treatment and lay people also involved. So the intent of that is to analyze our evidence-based practices, jail overcrowding, pretrial practices, community supervision, treatment courts, drug courts, those sorts of things. And make recommendations, collaborate as a system, problem solve together, and then report back to the state. And we're not sure what happens after that, but one can speculate. We were recently made aware of a grant opportunity. It's called the Community Collaboration Grant. And it was put out to support counties as they develop strategic plans and this collaborative for JRAC. Our intent then, whenever we decided to apply for it, was to hire someone who could work for the county to help us apply for grants, to continue getting the funding that we need to be able to support things and projects that we as justice stakeholders come together feel like should be funded. It's also to help facilitate the work of JRAC, because all of us are people with full-time jobs serving on this council, but we need to make moves and make sure the action is happening. And this person would be able to help facilitate the work of JRAC locally, whether it's policy updates and changes to practices, or kind of convening key decision makers to help make better decisions. So that's kind of our vision for this position. And with this position, the grant also has funding for training, travel and training, for the full JRAC committee to be able to attend an organizational and strategic planning training for just the full council, and not council, county council, but like the JRAC. Yeah. And then there's also funding there again for some contracted facilitation of those meetings. The position that we're asking again is another project management position. Was created by the county commissioners last week. I have not had a chance to go back and listen to it. But the job description, I assume, was approved, and the grant budget actually is for 16 months as opposed to, or 30 pays, we'll say that, it's for 30 pays, not 26 pays.
Can I ask the same question again? Do we have room for this person?
We will make room.
We will. Will they be a house in your building?
You know, that's something that the JRAC has not fully decided just yet.
It could probably work from home.
That's what I'm saying.
It could really work for me, yeah. There'll be somebody that would probably need to float between departments, would need to be there for some of our collaborative meetings, but doesn't necessarily need to have a home office unless they really want one, and then we, like I said, could make room. Also, not fully decided. On here I have that the JRAC, they report to the JRAC, which is a large group of people.
I think, Anthony, you're the president of the JRAC.
Correct, yes, sir. It's 11 or 12 members, I think, our board council. Correct.
Yeah, they're all.
Six, yeah, Alex is on.
Alex,
Oh.
yeah.
That's right, 6.
6 or 12.
And this, what I have for the salary ordinance, we are moderately concerned that this funding is way more temporary than most grants that we apply for. And so we wanted to compensate the person, whoever gets it. At a relatively decent rate.
I think you had mentioned that PAT 4 again.
Also a PAT 4, yep, in that wage range of, actually specifically for this one, it's 19 $29.30 per pay. And then per hour, that comes out to $27.57.
What was the bi-weekly again? 1930?
$1,930.
Oh, even.
Now, the commissioners, when they did approve this, they said it's pending the money and will end when the grant ends.
Right.
Do you have anybody in mind for this position?
No, although I have, it's got to be somebody who has an understanding, I think, of just the justice system in general, not necessarily Du Bois County, but the inner workings. So it could be a benefit if it were somebody internal or someone already working in another county, I think. Somebody with knowledge of the justice system.
Sandy, how do you want to handle this? You still working on it?
Well, I had a lot of blank forms because I didn't really have some of the information. So this would be the salary and the benefits, $81,157 on personal services.
Entertain a motion for personal services for that amount.
So moved.
Hey, Charmaine, made a motion, I have a second.
I'll second.
Sonia seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Maybe I spaced out. Help me. I'm just having a little bit of trouble understanding what this person's going to do. Applying for grants was one.
Mm-hmm. And with JRAC, there's going to be action items that we are going to, as a group, say, okay, this needs to be done. So for example, one of the things is like system mapping, strategic planning. It's going to be coming up with some of those products that the state needs us to provide to them. But yeah, applying for grants, grant reporting.
Can I say, I think we're ahead of the curve a little bit on that. We started looking into this when we started talking about building a new jail. And a lot of us said, that's fine and dandy as far as the physical part of it, but we need to look at our processes and, how can we make the justice system better, not by stone and mortar, but, what we do. And so this person that she's talking about is a person that can kind of evaluate the whole system. And we've been kind of doing that ourselves. And I think a lot of things that we're doing, like we're asking for a new judge, that might be something ordinarily that might come from this JRAC committee. We're asking for an interpreter to be hired, to be used in the courts and probation and community corrections and other places. That's something, again, that might come from that committee. We have established a pretrial services program where people are being evaluated when they're arrested to determine, what risk they present to the community or, not showing up again. Again, those are things that the Justice Reinvestment Action Committee would be looking at. So we're doing a lot of these things, I think, already. But, again, it takes time away from all of us to try to set those things up. Megan has done a great job, like the pretrial services program and a lot of the community corrections programs. That's one of the things that I was going to mention is since I've been a judge here, one of the greatest things that's happened is the growth of our community corrections program and the fact that we have, when I first started, we had a community corrections program where it was work release and it was home detention, and that was about it. there really was no programming. There was no, or not much to speak of as far as helping these people, as far as evidence-based programs that would help them address their behavior, get them treatment for drug and alcohol abuse, things of that nature. We were less restricted than the jail, but we still weren't releasing on detention. Now, Community Corrections has grown into a full service. We will help a person any way we can to help them become a better person. And that's really what JRAC is all about, is the state has said every community needs to look at how they can improve their justice system to help people. And again, we were doing that already. So now all we've done is make a formal committee, and we're just looking for somebody to kind of spearhead that, as opposed to taking time from all of our schedules. We're all busy doing our jobs. We want someone that has that as their sole priority to take that on and help us, implement all the programs or whatever we decide might be best. So that's my 2 cents.
That was perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So how does that compare with like some of the data collecting that your CQI specialist does?
That person truly is specific to, we've kind of built it into more than what it is originally intended, I'll say that. But that, is truly specific to case management and probation officers. And she does do a great job looking at the jail data and the court data and those sorts of things. But primarily that role is designed to coach and train up our probation officers, do some direct observation with case managers, cross-score our assessments. It's a lot of the more micro stuff, like this is what we do, help us get better at those things that we do so that we can reduce the macro, like big picture recidivism pieces. So
Thanks for
laying
those out, like just differentiating between them. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready? Can we do further services then?
I'm ready.
At 22,843.
They've got them broken down.
Okay.
Travel and training, 14,843.
Okay. So let's take travel and training. So we have a motion. I'll make a motion to accept that.
I'll second that.
Craig seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That's approved.
And then the next one I have is the contracted services for 8,000.
Okay, contracted services for 8,000. I have a motion to accept that.
So moved.
Charmaine, in motion, may I have a second? Second. Alex second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
And then the salary ordinance. I have $1,930 bi-weekly.
So we gotta have a motion to approve that $1,930 bi-weekly salary. We'll make a motion, I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then me. Anyone opposed to it?
Pre-trial IOP.
Problems when the grants run out.
Yeah. Okay, that's about it, so go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, you're good.
No, go ahead.
Okay, this next one is the Indiana Office of Court Services pretrial grant. This is for calendar year 2022. It's the one that I may have mentioned previously that we received notice on December 31st that we received the funding. But didn't fully have all of the things that we needed as far as like exactly what our budget was approved, and had to go through advisory board and those sorts of things. So I'm here tonight to ask that we appropriate our grant for the Indiana Office of Court Services Pretrial Services Department. This funds 2 pretrial services officers, and also $5,000, which is a pretty large cut from last year, for our public defender to be present in initial hearings.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Your $5,000 cut, or down, it's $5,000, you said?
Yes.
It was a cut?
So it's basically Indiana Office of Court Services approved to retain all current and existing employees from pretrial services departments across the state, but didn't make a whole lot. Like we used to have, we had a training budget from this grant. We were able to pay for transportation vouchers for our participants to get to and from treatment in court. We had a cell phone budget to be able to do on-call stuff. So all that got cut, except for they're maintaining the 2 positions. And also our public defender fund got cut drastically. I mean, it was just all part of it. I think what we're experiencing is so many more counties now are getting on board, and they're requesting funding too, which I think is to be expected whenever, you know, the state legislates something and the counties have to kind of comply, and you oftentimes need additional resources to be able to do that. So I think they're just reallocating their funds.
So is there a chance you have to come back to us for more money then, since things were cut? To offset that?
I have been offsetting it with my project income. I mean, it's just, is what it is.
Okay.
It's a community corrections program.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't have the pay for these. I'm trying to look through my papers.
So I want to say 1649.10, maybe?
Scavenger.
That's for each trial officer, you're saying?
Yes.
Their biweekly pay
Oh, here.
is
Is it in here? I think I found this.
$1698.57.
1698.
$1698.57 is their biweekly pay. I mean, that's what they've been getting paid since the beginning of 2022. I feel like we approved the salary ordinance whenever we were doing budgets.
We may have.
Like way back when.
Is it the same as the other pretrial
Pretrial
program?
services officer.
So they're the same.
There's a pretrial services coordinator that's different. It's more because she's supervisor.
So would we need to do that individually for each one, or each 2 motions, or?
I need a motion for $106,600 on personal services.
Let's have a motion for that, for personal services of 1,606. 1,600.
106,000.
106,600.
I move we approve that.
Okay. So Charmaine made a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Alex seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, then your other services, would they have to be broken out?
Yeah, no, just $5,000.
Other services, $5,000. May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Becky made a motion. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Sonia seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
So the salary ordinance has to be redone just because it's coming out of a different fund?
I would rather do it and be safe than not have it and need it. And you said it's 1,698.57.
I'll make a motion that we accept that salary ordinance of $1,698.57
For each of them.
for each one.
I'll second it.
Made and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I should also point out that, this grant, part of their salaries is also coming out of the PI. I don't know that we've actually gone to, appropriate that just yet, but that has been approved by the board and it's in our DOC grant already. But part of it, only part of their salaries are in this. Their raises, of course, are in their PI.
We did it. We made it through all of
We
them.
did. I actually, whenever I saw my time slot, I was like, I'm not even going to 10 minutes. I'm sorry.
I apologize for that. I mean, that was just,
I tried to talk really fast. I gave you the basics.
that was my fault. 'Cause somebody put something behind it and I couldn't, anyway.
Thank you.
Next is.
We have a transfer yet, Megan.
What?
Remember you have a transfer?
$1,500, yeah.
So you want to do that real quick? Because we had to do the grant before we could
Yes.
transfer it.
Thank you. One of the things that was left out whenever she originally advertised, was, supplies and a laptop for, the JRAC project manager. And so that's just a reappropriation from travel and training into the 200 series, from 300 to 200. Thank you. So requesting a
That's
motion
for
to,
1,500.
yeah, just to transfer out of 300 and into 200.
Anyone want to make a motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Doug made a motion to approve it. I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Thank you.
opposed? Aye.
So that's this one right
Okay, sorry.
That's all right, tell me when you're ready.
I'm just gonna
You
keep
folks
this
are earning your money tonight. A lot on your plate.
Okay, you can go ahead.
I'm here, asking that Emily Meyer, who is a community corrections employee, receive a bonus. And I need to tell you how this came about, I suppose. And I've talked about community corrections and what a big change there's been there and how proud I am of community corrections and to be just a small part of that. But anyway, this is another situation where community corrections comes to the rescue. I would say in about July of last year, well, I don't know if you recall, but last year we had a alcohol and drug program, and then we have a drug court program. Those are two separate programs. And last year sometime, I essentially terminated the alcohol and drug program because I found that it was redundant because community corrections and probation were offering a lot of the same services and referrals and assessments. So we thought that's a program that we don't need anymore. It's obsolete. We did away with it. Something you very rarely see in government. And then we got rid of a program. As a result, we had a drug court, and at that time, we had a director who was a director over the alcohol and drug program and the drug court. Well, since the alcohol and drug program was going away, we really didn't need a director as well as a case manager, and then there was an administrative assistant. So our director, seeing the writing on the wall and knowing that he was near retirement, resigned from that position, probably I think about July of last year. And he took a position, temporary position in community corrections, and then he retired in December of last year. When he stepped down, then the alcohol and drug program and the winding up of the alcohol and drug program and the drug court then fell to our case manager. Then on November the 19th of last year, our case manager, well, I guess he gave us a couple of weeks notice, but our case manager resigned. So at that point, we had a drug court with an administrative assistant and no other employees. And what it came down to was at that point, if we didn't have someone step in to help us out, that I was going to be the judge, and I was going to be the case manager, and I was going to be the director. I was going to have to do everything. As you know, that wasn't going to go over too well. So, very graciously, Megan talked to one of her case managers, and that case manager, although she had no obligation to and didn't have to, volunteered, I think, to step in and be an interim case manager for the drug court, help us out. So she took on those extra responsibilities, or those responsibilities that were not hers originally. Now, I should point out that our case manager for drug court is paid for by the DOC grant that goes through community corrections. So the salary for our case managers is paid through community corrections, even though they report to me. But in any event, I really don't know what would have happened to our drug court had this individual not been willing to step up and handle our case manager responsibilities. Since that time, of course, we've been able to continue drug court, and we now have hired a new drug court case manager, and again, it's someone from community corrections. I stole one of their facilitators to become our new drug court case manager. But in any event, we've been able to keep the program running. In the meantime, we've graduated four people during that interim period from drug court. And like I say, I don't think it would have been possible. I think the program would have come upon very hard times and probably collapsed had it not been for this case manager stepping up. So what the Community Corrections Board has approved, if it's approved by the council, a bonus for this individual, a one-time bonus. And that's what I'm asking for today, that the council approve a one-time bonus for this case manager in the amount of $5,000. Our case manager who resigned in November, because that case manager left, there are funds that were paid for by a grant that had not been expended. And those amount to $12,108.09. So we're asking that just a portion of that be used to pay a bonus to this individual who stepped up for the greater good and helped us in a really tough time. So I don't know if Megan wants to add anything to that, because again, it was one of her employees, but she did a great job. She is still transitioning to our new case manager, who is currently off on paternity leave, I suppose, but he'll be back in a couple of weeks, and so we're handing that over gradually, and she's training him in too. So she's been a tremendous asset for us.
I would just also add that Emily, she is kind of that person for community corrections who does step in whenever I have other projects that need to be done. In the time that she's been dedicating to drug court, of course, anytime that you ask somebody to take on another person's full-time job, some of the other things that she would typically be doing for community corrections did kind of get stalled, and so while she maybe didn't, go over and above and work, earn a ton of comp time or anything in this situation. It was more a matter of, she has 70 hours to get 2 full-time jobs done in that time frame. And like just the amount of work that she crammed into those hours, I mean, it's unlike really anybody that I've ever seen. She's a wonderful asset to the county and to the justice system as a whole.
So just asking for a little reward for her, I guess, above and beyond. Any questions or, and it's really, I don't know if we have to transfer money because like I say, it's already there by a grant. It's just being paid to a different person than it was before.
So I got a couple questions, I guess, so, Your Honor. So how long of a time was this where Emily was?
From November 9th till today. I mean, she's still, for I think our other case manager will be back April the 4th. But again, she's still helping him, training him in. So we're talking about probably 6 months, give or take.
Okay. And then, so extra time, so Megan, you said she crammed it all into doing 2 jobs in the one, so she still stayed there 35 hours weekly.
She may have occasionally earned some comp time here and there, which is not uncommon for most of our employees just in general.
Okay.
She gets paid for 70 hours, so.
Sure. So, so how did you come up with 5,000? What's that number? Why is it not 8 or 3?
We just thought that was fair.
Okay.
No magic formula or anything. It's, I thought, we had 12,000. I thought 12,000 is too much. But I felt 5 was fair.
Okay.
And it's money that's already there.
Advisory board, the Community Corrections Advisory
Yeah,
Board,
that's the amount they
had a discussion, made that recommendation. If I could just add something to, I'm on the drug court team as well. So I've seen the work that Emily has done, and I would just reiterate that not only did she step in, but she improved some of the things that were being done from the previous case manager in a very short window. A lot of the participants have responded positively to the change and to the direction that she's given them. So it's not just that she was filling in, she's actually improved the outcome of some of our participants.
Okay, this doesn't have to do with this exactly. The director, there is no director in that program any longer.
I'm essentially the director at this point.
I mean, will there be another director?
Well, I was, how to put it, let's see, I was not prepared to make our case manager a director at the time that these changes were being made. And I'm not sure that we need a director because, like I said, we've eliminated the alcohol and drug program. We now have the drug court program. The drug court program does not have as many participants as we once did 3 or 4 years ago. So our numbers are down. I hope at some point they'll go back up, but they're down a little bit compared to where they were a few years back. So my position was basically we don't need a director and a case manager. And so for the time being, at least, I'm content having a case manager. And if at some point things change and we need a director, then, we'll address that when we need to. And the beauty of that too is that for the time being, at least, our case manager has been fully funded by the DOC grant. So our drug court program is not costing the county anything.
Thanks for helping me understand that.
So you graduated 4, so how many are in the program now?
Well, we voted to terminate 1 today, so I want to say 9, but is that 8 or 9? Somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't know, somewhere around there. we've got a couple more under consideration, that may be coming in soon. But there aren't the numbers that we had, at our peak. I think we had like 26 people in drug court.
So is that a good thing? I mean, does that mean
Well-
something's changed? No?
My feeling is, and I don't really know what the reason is, but my feeling is that drug court has always been a kind of a last resort. Someone who has a drug or alcohol problem, and they're to the point where either they need to fix it or they're going to prison. That's kind of where we are. And I think that people have figured out that drug court is not easy. It's a hard program. It's 18 months, and it requires an awful lot out of our participants. And I think some of them have just decided, I'm just going to jail or I'm going to prison. I don't want to work that hard. And that's what I attribute it to. I don't know what the rest of you think, but
I guess from the prosecutor's perspective, kind of whenever there was a change in a lot of the criminal penalties, 1006 made some changes, drastic changes. A lot of people weren't as eager to get into it because there wasn't as much time or punishment hanging over their head. So with a decrease in the possible penalties, there, as Judge pointed out, with the stringent program, they just decided they would take their chances with jail or some other avenue versus going through the program. So that's kind of when I noticed a kind of a down there in the number of participants.
I think it's still a very worthwhile program for those who want to participate in it and do participate. I think that we've had really good success with it. But like I say, I just think people, know now that it's a tough program. It's not easy, and there's a lot expected of you. And it's just too hard for some of them.
I hung out there with some different CASA parents that I had, figuring they wouldn't lie to the judge. So I'm gonna hang out there to really hear what the story is.
I guess I want to comment. So before we have more discussion, so I guess this whole, Emily, I'm sure is a great employee. I don't know her. So I think one of the things that I've learned being on the council now for 7+ years is that there's times where we make decisions that we're fixing a problem, but we've created another one. And I think this is where this falls into. This is an unintended consequence of rewarding an employee who's exceptional and the ideal employee what we want. But what happens is, because it's government, everybody knows everything, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's going to happen is, in my opinion, we approve this, and then Jenny is going to come back a few weeks later. I'm just being hypothetical. I don't care. I'm just saying, any other department head will come in and say, I have an employee with a like situation. We were in a tough spot. They did extra, and then they'd issue a reward. And then it doesn't stop. So, and that is it's a lousy excuse, lousy reason. I will acknowledge that without a doubt. But that's where we lie, and that's where this is it. So, I don't know if we're just having more discussion, but I'm going to say that I'm going to have a tough time supporting this. So that's I'm voting on it, but that's where I'm at right now. So, and I respect what she's done, and you guys have created it.
And I understand your position.
Right.
And that's why I was actually showing out. So it was like, are other departments going to come in now and
I can't tell
request? And kind of like we had that salary, people requesting raises. We had 20, 30 some. Like my thoughts were, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
Not that I don't think that she deserves it, going above and beyond, but I just kind of worry that it's going to cause more problems down.
And I understand.
And more animosity between.
I just think this is a little bit different situation where basically we were left in a position where we didn't have any employees, and so, like I say, I was going to have to take on that responsibility. I was going to have to be the case manager in addition to the judge, and even, it took a while to hire someone, even, the first set of resumes that I got, I didn't interview anybody out of the first bunch. I mean, I just tossed them and advertised again because there was nobody qualified to do that. The second time we had some interviews, but we had a hard time, kind of getting someone that I was happy with in this position. I think the individual that we have now will do a great job, but it wasn't easy to fill the position. So I just think, like I say, this is a situation where probably the whole thing would have just fell in on itself had we not had someone step in. So,
Anybody else?
I think it's a little different.
When you're on that committee, when you feel, what's your feeling?
My feelings are Emily did an excellent job. She stepped up to the plate when she had to, but how many county employees do we have that step up to the plate that work for Steve Bird or Sandy Morton or Amy Kippenbrock doing the same thing? And I don't know that it's prudent to set a precedent that you give a public employee a bonus, because I was a public employee for years. And the only bonuses that occurred for public employees were embezzlement or bribes. And I don't say that out of disrespect. I say the truth. That's the truth. So I want to vote for it because it's a grant money, but the precedent it's tough for me, because someday it's going to be taxpayer money, and Steve Bird's got to fix he took over a supervisory role and helped keep the roads usable. We don't talk about those guys, but they're in the trenches, and what she did is commendable, deserving of more money. But I can't, my principles say that you can't do that with a public employee.
Thanks. Sonny, you want to say anything?
Yeah, ready.
Well,
Well, no, I was thinking, that's awesome that she stepped up to the plate and went from your department to help you, and then you guys bring all this up, and I don't know. I'm torn, I really am. It's very hard because it's not like it's within her own department per se, correct? Am I correct on that?
right.
And grant money is taxpayer money.
Yes, it is, yeah, so that's why I'm like really thrown here now.
I mean,
I'm gonna sit down and let you guys discuss it. If you have questions, I'm glad to answer them. I don't wanna.
you want to stay the camera off of here?
No.
My thought, I'll let you guys, I researched a little bit, and
We have no viewers.
I know the commissioners had a lot of discussion during the COVID crisis. And, the health director and the EMA director both, I looked it up last night. The EMA director worked 613 hours additional, and the health director worked 357 hours. And that was a lot on weekends, Sundays, and a lot of other things, and I really stood behind him, even though the commissioners, we voted on it here too, but the commissioners reviewed it first and approved it. So when you look at that, EMA director was given not a bonus, but an additional pay of $6,000, and the health director was given additional pay of $4,000. So, they were both, what do you call it, qualified employees or whatever. So exempt employees, I'm sorry. So I would have a tough time doing this. So that's my thoughts. And I think before I was thinking tonight, this kind of got sprung on us. I was even thinking maybe this ought to be run through the commissioners first and see if they, I don't know, maybe it doesn't have to be, but they approved the additional pay during the COVID crisis. So I don't know, you want to say any more?
No, I mean, that's true. Maybe the process should start there because it did before. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Yeah. I don't think I need to add anything. I mean, I feel like I said what I was.
Becky, would you want to say anything? Or
I don't have anything different. I feel like Sonia, and then, but I do understand you know, we had a lot of thoughts about doing that for the EMA director and the health department. It creates a lot of turmoil and hard feelings. But I don't know. I don't.
Okay, Charmaine, you want to make any comments?
I'm not really sure either. I mean, it's hard to make a decision whenever you just find out about it. Part of me is, agreeable. Yeah, let's reward her some, but I can't. I don't think I can support to the tune of $5,000, especially given the history with, the people that we have compensated for the extra time that they've done. There were lots of hundreds of hours worked overtime without compensation.
So as a council, do we want to just table this until, and maybe have them bring it to the commissioners next meeting, and then we'll vote on it in our March meeting, or we can have it?
Why would the commissioners,
You don't think they need to have it?
I'm just saying they don't set salaries, you guys do.
Okay, this is really not a salary. It's
I can take no for an answer. I understand, it seems unanimous, so,
I'm just asking.
I don't know, I wonder why they were so involved. Was
I
that
don't-
because of COVID funds or
I
the CARES?
don't know.
Mr. Blessinger is on the Community Corrections Advisory Board for what that is worth, and he voted in favor.
No, he didn't.
No, I
No,
didn't.
he didn't?
He was-
Oh, sorry. Never mind.
I will, but, I'll let Emily know that she was appreciated. I don't know, if it's appropriate for the council to, recognize her or whatever, but not financially, but just in some way. Recognize that she went above and beyond. Even that's fine. I understand what you're saying.
We can't give her something because we have to tax her on it.
Oh, I understand.
You can, you can tax somebody. on it,
Right.
but you-
I said we can give them something, we'd have to tax her on it.
Okay, I think if there's no motion or if somebody wants to make a motion, otherwise.
You
we
can
just
make
let
it die
die.
due to a lack of a motion.
Yeah, just let it die. So,
No.
How did I?
all right, so next,
I'll be right behind you.
Okay.
Over here.
All right, well, good evening. I am back to talk about the county interpreter position. I know we came probably a couple months ago now and talked to you about how we were going to the commissioners to ask to have this funded or to have it created, and the commissioners did approve to create this position. That's very much needed. We're coming before you tonight to ask for the funding. I did send an email out earlier today. I apologize, I wanted to send that 2 weeks ago. I was waiting, I thought I needed to have a budget from the HR department, but in talking with Sandy this morning, she said that's not needed. So I went ahead and sent out an email that included the job description as well as a proposed schedule for this individual. We all work together as county entities, different department heads on where we thought we could utilize the person. And it's arbitrary, it's driven for the court by arrest of individuals that may need a translator. So we can't set it in stone, and whoever would be hired for this position would need to remain fluid and travel around to where they are needed. So with that in mind, Sandy has already advertised for the following. Under Human Resources, she advertised for $23,800. Under FICA, $1,821, and PERF, $2,666, and that would come, FICA and PERF would come out of the commissioner's budget. They would all of the above would be additional appropriations from the county general fund.
The reason we came up with that amount is Marky and I discussed, if you guys approved it tonight, he'd have to advertise, we'd have to interview. We couldn't start somebody until probably May, but we went to April 24th as a starting period. So we knew how much money we didn't want to do for a whole year. That would be wasting 4 months of stuff.
Right, so it's a bi-weekly pay of $1,400. This equals $20 per hour.
Which is, the
$1,400.
commissioners approved the position at a was it
I have that here.
Comod or Pat, I can't remember which. and then
It's Coma, I believe.
Coma 3 at $20 an hour.
So Jenny, can you talk about the certification they have? So was there not a discussion that they'll have to be certified or obtain
Right.
a certification?
We did include that in our job description. A certified court interpreter is very difficult to find because the certification is somewhat difficult. Some of the translations in legal terms are very hard and don't equate specifically to the language, so they have to do some additional studying and some additional training on that. I believe it's just, the certification is just offered in January, and Judge, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but the research I've done on it, I really only offer it one time a year. And the individuals would go to that training in January and then have to pass a test at the end to become certified. As a judicial system, we want a certified interpreter for certain trials and certain crimes. There has to be a certified translator there for our individual for due process.
So we would do that training.
Right, and we included that in the job description that we would need them to work towards being certified. And I did include, so with that in mind, talking with Sandy this morning, thinking it through a little further and talking with Marky, we didn't think through everything as far as like desks and computers and then the additional training. So I included that at the end. If the position is funded tonight, we would also need to look at doing an additional appropriation for a desk. Marky thought he could get one for around $500, an office chair of $250, a cell phone of $40 per month. We went back and forth on this. We feel like a cell phone is more appropriate for this individual than having a desk hardline phone so that they can travel. So if they're out at the health department and the clerk has a walk-in, we could get this individual on the cell phone to translate via phone for us. So I think that would be very beneficial. And that averages around $40 a month. A computer, Sandy talked about how she recently put out a quote for more.
These are rough estimates.
Yeah, they're rough. We think it's high, the $1,800. We hope it's high.
A laptop, that would be a laptop.
Right. So whenever we got that whenever we got our tablets, I believe they were around $1,400. I know when we just did one through another grant, it was $936, but we ordered a bunch together. And that was before a lot of the supply and demand issue. So I know hopefully that is high. And then the training, travel, and mileage, we estimated around $500. This individual would travel back and forth. I would think it would only be 3 or 5 miles at a time, unless there's an emergency, like EMA might require them out on scene somewhere, that might be more mileage, or the sheriff's department. With it being a countywide position, it's just kind of unknown at this point what it's going to look like. And then other office supplies, Marky thought maybe he would like them to have a file cabinet in the office that is dedicated to them when they work on translating different forms over for the county.
Where would they go? Like, where are we gonna put this?
They're gonna go all around, we think,
Corner.
yeah. I don't know if you looked at the schedule I created. I have some extra copies.
Yep.
So our thought is if an individual's arrested overnight that would need translation services, they would be out at pretrial first thing in the morning assisting them, whether that's out at community corrections or in the jail, wherever they're doing that initial assessment at. After that, on Monday mornings, we would love to have them in probation post-conviction for an individual that has already pled guilty to a crime and needs to meet with us for a sentencing recommendation. I have the luxury, I guess, that I can move that around if need be. So I don't have to have them there first thing like pre-trial would have to have them. And then a lunch in there. I'm thinking lunch 11:30 to 12:30 each day. And then around 1 o'clock, depending on the day and the court schedule, initials, so individuals that pre-trial maybe met with that morning that needed a translator, then we need to come back to court with them, whether that's circuit or superior. And that would be moved around, maybe sometimes it's 11 o'clock, sometimes it's 1 o'clock. It just depends where it fits in their schedule.
Usually one.
And then after that, spending time on Monday afternoon in human resources, he needs an assistant to help him with individual things. So that's kind of what the Monday would look like. Tuesday starts the same with pre-trial, and then the prosecutor would like to try and schedule things that they need a translator for during that next time frame. And then back to circuit or superior initials. And then on Tuesdays, and this isn't every Tuesday, but circuit court does chins matters, does juvenile delinquencies, those type of things. We're finding out that we do need an interpreter, if not necessarily for the child that's in there, for the parents that are there with them. And then that follows them to probation and then out to community corrections. So this individual would follow. whoever needs the services. So it just kind of goes throughout the week. We have them back, like in probation again on Wednesday evenings for Project to 10 for juveniles in the school system that maybe are coming to the court. And then on Thursdays and Fridays out in the health department and community corrections. And then Thursday afternoon in Superior Court for traffic court, that's every Thursday. Maybe not every Thursday that we need a translator, it just depends. And then a lot of the day Friday at the health department. I don't really like to have this individual more. So if we don't need them on a Monday, maybe they could be out there at the health department. So as department heads, we will work together. There'll have to be a lot of communication. And then
Just thinking about the desk, I'm like, where's the desk gonna go?
has to be a small desk too.
Is it in Marky's office or? Okay.
Marky said he's been looking for
Okay,
one, and
okay.
yeah, the desk would go in Marky's office.
I think today he kind of made a comment, he may wait just a little bit to see how much he actually has this person.
Yeah,
Okay, that's what I was curious about, like, well, if we're getting a desk, like, which spot are we going?
when they're in our office, they're gonna use our supplies. When they're in the court, they'll use their paper and their pens, and
Right.
so supply-wise like that, we thought would be shared with all the departments and not have to be a separate individual budget.
That's good.
Yeah, so that's where we're at. We're here tonight to ask you to fund this position so that we can move forward with getting someone hired.
Jenny, I was wanting to ask you your opinion on something. There's over the weekend, there's a grant, a state grant from the health department for Together We Will. And they were looking at, they thought this interpreter position could possibly work, for a partial funding of that, or maybe even all of them. I think it's $1,000 to $75,000 a year. If we go ahead and approve this and hire this person and approve the thing tonight, would you think that would jeopardize with your experience, it jeopardize the chances of us getting any grant money?
I think so. I think it's twofold, and once you have the grant, you can't, or once you have it created, you can't ask for the grant to supplant. So, yes. So after I sent out the email this morning, Sean did give me a call, and he's like, hey, I want to clue you in. I sent a grant to the commissioners and to HR, and I wanted them to look at it. And so I tried to quickly look through it, and I think this individual could fit in there, particularly in the area. There's one that talks about, systemic barriers, but it's a 1-year grant, and it's $1,000 to $75,000. So if we apply for this, are we going to get enough to fund the position for this 1 year, and then where do we go from there? Or do they fund part of it, and then we're back trying to fund the other part? I don't know. I haven't had a chance to look totally through it though, because it was just kind of thrown out to me today.
Sunday night is when
When you saw
got
it.
into it pretty deep.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if, I hate to hold up because I know we're in need of this. So there's, kind of don't want to spin our wheels here on that grant if you don't, you probably have more familiarization than I do with it.
Yeah.
But they kind of wanted the council to try to get that, try to fill that, or request that grant.
I read through it today and watched the video. And for the part that would go for the health department to pay for the interpreter, I think $75,000 to the health department could go to a much better fit. I don't think you're gonna get $75,000 for a part-time interpreter. Just don't think so. I think the health department could use it in another area. Excuse me. When it gets into the mental health and substance, there's a lot of different categories. But again, was it a 1 year?
Yeah, it was a 1 year. Until the money's gone. It says it's a rolling basis until the money's gone.
Right. So you can apply to like June 2023 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did get that far into it, but I didn't have time to study it because I just got it closer to noon, and then we had to work this afternoon. So I haven't had time to really study it and say yes or no. I know there are different entities in there that it talks about. There's an environmental justice, but then it talks about it falling under the health department. So I don't know that would really fit here either. So the only one maybe that fit would be that systemic barriers, but then it also talks about that in relation to the health department and them not getting the needs that they need, which would work for the interpreter.
Didn't mention so much court and law enforcement and all that. It was health health related. So that's what I was thinking, if health department only has a very part-time 1 or 1.5 days a week,
Oh,
you know, and to go after that on a grant, I'd say, let's go after a different position to get the full 75,000, if you're gonna do that. I just don't see that it's gonna pay for an interpreter in the court system or whatever. It's a health grant.
Any other questions or thoughts?
So go ahead with it.
Judge, anything? You know, they've been involved in the process too.
Just fully supported, I think we need it, we needed it for a while. The number of Hispanic folks in Du Bois County is not decreasing. We'll up and up and up.
The one thing I noticed on here, you have cell phone $40, that's per month, so you have to put 480.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you're only
Oh,
paying
yeah,
for
that
1 month
changes
there.
things, doesn't it?
Versus, you know, so that number's a little off down on the bottom, but that we don't have on the table right now.
I did think I saw a desk that was excess.
Well, it's not anymore. It's
Oh,
on
yeah, I said that too as soon as Sandy.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, and it was a smaller desk.
Those things don't last more than a day.
Yeah, well.
And it's possible.
Friday.
I think it's gone.
Okay, yeah, well, and a file cabinet, I told them too, you know, maybe I can cycle one out of my office and as we go paperless a little more, that he just have one of those. He wants a smaller cabinet. You know, certainly we'll all share and do what we can.
I think those kind of things, there may be some sitting around.
Yeah.
So that came, this request came this afternoon or whenever I got it. So, I mean, when I read it, would it be coming out of the commissioner's budget? How did this?
Well, when I advertised it, I didn't really know how much they had and who had what. So when Marky and I discussed, we just thought we would take whatever 17 pays out of for in general fund in Marky's department. Now, any benefits in general come out of commissioner, so that's why you see the two different spots. So we didn't know, and I didn't want to assume and take money out of his fund and then have 5 here and so much here, and then he needs his 5, and then what do we do? And
We have to move money.
then I got to move money again or advertise it again, and I didn't. And at the time, I had to be at the paper that afternoon, so I didn't really have a lot of time to.
It's been a little difficult because so many departments are involved, like who's gonna spearhead this and who needs this and who's gonna do this part. And so I think we've kind of worked that out. I'm like, well, let me just kind of take this part on and Sandy and Marky have worked together. So between all of us, we're the schedule, we work together to try and come up with times.
Well, I know Marky worked a few weeks on trying to get this job description.
He sent it out to all of us and we gave him ideas and put it in. So I think it's a prediction of how the position's gonna be. We're all gonna have to work together. If I have them on a Monday and all of a sudden the court says, hey, we had 6 people arrested and they all need translators, we're gonna be pulling from everywhere. And
Well, and I think being an outside department of that, we get people that walk in and we got to figure it out.
and so this individual would have a cell phone that.
So that we could call and say
Having
we
a
need.
cell phone, that it's like if you're out at the health department for the whole afternoon and there's no, there's no active translating going on, hey, call me up.
Are you available?
Have to
Can you
be
translate
right
there?
there.
Like, yeah,
And that's why I think there would have to be a cell phone.
I agree.
I think they're gonna have to be very flexible.
Yeah.
Whoever it is to accommodate patients and.
Yeah.
Because ours could last 2 minutes and be done.
Mm-hmm.
But we do a lot of this.
Yeah. And hope it's accurate.
It's all we have.
Yeah.
Unless kitties happen to be in.
So we kind of discussed this for a while here. I just wonder, I mean, does anybody have anything that's negative or against this or before we get this started? Because that seems like it's got to be a whole, the whole fall. I don't think we're going to proceed here. So hearing none, I guess let's start it out. Which one do we want to start with? Sandy, can you?
The personal services, the salary, $23,800.
I'll make a motion that we approve that.
I'll second.
Okay, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Sorry, can't write that
That's why I
fast.
can,
And then the other services, the FICA and the perf that go with it is $4,487.
I have a motion to approve that.
I'll make that motion.
Becky made a motion, I have a second.
Actually,
Actually, it's quite
Charmaine and what?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, I didn't hear.
Becky, it was Becky.
Oh, okay. Becky and
I'll second.
Sonia seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Again, I'm getting back to that grant, you think that's fruitless to go after anything after the fact here, so
I can't say till I look at it more, I haven't had time to really explore it. I do know that once we create the position and it's funded, we can't take a grant and then pay for that position.
nope, that's the
Because that's the
planting.
planting. I do know in talking with Becky, we were talking about the CNR tax, and as a JRAP committee, monies that become available through that possibly could be used for this position after the building is completed. So that is some of our hopes as a JRAP committee.
well, thanks for that.
And that is something we can do internally, pay from here and then pay from there.
Because it's not a grant, it would be planning at that point. So there's hope that there's other monies to pay for it, just not right now.
Okay, so I need the salary ordinance then, $1,400 bi-weekly.
I have a motion to approve that. Charmaine made a motion, I have a second. Alex seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
It's gonna be fun checking for a minute.
Sandy, thoughts on the additional appropriation for training and supplies, or do we need to do that tonight, ask for that?
You get a consensus, they can't, I haven't advertised it, so they can't vote on it. They can only do a consensus.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, I was asking Sandy about the additional appropriation monies for like the desk and the computer.
Yeah.
Since it's not advertised, it couldn't be voted on, but I guess we could get a consensus tonight. So doing some recalculations with the cell phone, I come up with $3,780 total. Hopefully I'm right with my math.
3,780.
Yes. Is that what you come up with, Sandy?
I didn't add it, sorry, I just was looking at it. And
So, I think you guys understood that desk and all that, so it's kind of short answer who wants to approve that or
So office supplies would come out of Marky's budget then, or whose budget?
probably Marky's with it.
I'm asking, because
He asked for the additional $250 for office supplies, but in his request, that was for a file cabinet and any other thing that.
does he?
We might not even buy the desk.
Right,
Right.
So, I mean, he's assuming it's gonna be in his office if we get a desk.
right. And so I guess if those monies would be appropriated, they could be utilized for the cell phone, then the computer, and if it's not as much as we had thought here, then it just goes back.
I don't know if we'd want to take a computer out of general fund. I think we'd want to put that in queuing funds or something. I mean, there's other funds, so that's just my thoughts.
Okay, so let's break it out. How much is the computer?
I'm assuming around, it's a laptop, we guess, and around 1,800.
Okay, 1,800 is gonna come from CubeCat. So what would that leave left over? 1,980?
And so if there's training, travel, or mileage, that would come out of Marky's budgets then too?
He doesn't have anything in his budget.
I was gonna say.
He doesn't have it.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, since the training is for the court
Yeah, maybe we could
translator, so
absorb
it's gonna have
that.
to come out of,
Yeah, I can pay for some.
See, I'm wondering if some of it can be
Yeah.
already in your budgets that you already have.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would think so.
And if you do have extra money in whatever line item it was, maybe we can transfer that
Over to
to
training.
something else that we need.
I
Are
have,
you talking about the $12,000 one?
No, we're talking about the 5,000
That's
that,
a grant.
I actually have an item that is for interpreter and mental health. So like if we have to determine someone's competent to stand trial, it comes out of that fund and interpreter. Right now, we're paying, interpreters on an hourly basis to help us out, other than Marina, who's with Purdue Extension, and she's volunteering. They're allowing us to use her part-time, but if we have someone else, we have to pay them. So there is a fund there. I'm anticipating we still may have to use a little bit of that, or some of that. I'd have to look to tell you exactly what's in. I think probably 10 or 12,000 for interpreter and mental health. And,
I'm just
and the
thinking-
mental health part of it, you never know. It just depends. I mean, if you get somebody that the attorney thinks they're incompetent, then you have to do evaluations. You have to pay psychiatrists and psychologists to evaluate them, and that gets into thousands of dollars.
and you could lose that tomorrow.
Yes.
That's why.
That's all. So then I would have to ask for an additional appropriation to use all that.
Would it be better if I kind of go through the list and then figure out where we can, like the cell phone? Marky doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't have the cell phone line item. The courts do.
Yeah.
Maybe it should come out and, be put there versus there.
Okay.
I'm just throwing out some.
I mean, I don't have any problem with any of that, as long as we still have enough in our budget for it.
Right.
I'm all for it.
Well, even if we did an additional to put
Yeah.
$480 more
If you
in
wanna
your
put
cell
that
phone
on the
line
funds,
item,
yeah, that's great.
because you're gonna use it. But we're not gonna use $480 this year. We're gonna
Yeah,
use it whatever.
Yeah, I can pay their cell phone bill out of my budget. That's fine.
So I think instead of taking time tonight to try to figure all this out, let us work on it, and then
you advertise.
we'll advertise it for the next meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, you can add anything to my budget if you want to.
Except a bonus.
Okay. Are you okay then?
Need anything else? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jenny.
Glad to get this off and rolling.
Was yesterday your birthday?
Oh my gosh, no, last week Sunday
Oh,
was.
I missed it.
Yeah.
Happy birthday. Turned
Thank
50,
you.
yeah. So,
I did,
Yes.
yeah, I know.
fantastic.
Oh, I'm not liking that number 50, I feel like I'm hanging on it down the slide.
It's an exciting time,
right?
it's all good. It's all good.
As long as I live to be 100, I'm only halfway there. There you go.
Oh, you're halfway then.
That's right, that's my goal, so it's 100.
That sounds good.
I hope thank you all.
Thank you.
Resolution number 2022-2. Sorry they're out of order today, but the commissioners passed 2022-1, and it's for the ARPA funds that were. Resolution of the County Council of DuBois County, Indiana, approving a plan for use of monies from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA of 2021. I think I sent it all to you all.
Yes.
The only comment I want to make on the last month, when we put that $69,250 we approved for that sewer work, after that meeting, we put that in general fund, county general. And afterwards, I had spoken with the commissioners and asked them if they could move another 70,000 from the sewage to the general fund. So that's the only thing that changed on that. So they took 70,000 and put it in lost revenue. So it goes into the general fund, and they lessened the sewage thing by $70,000.
Just to make that whole.
So this way we can still get reimbursed for it, and it's used for sewer projects. If I understand that, or
Good job, Mike. Thank you.
because it really didn't affect anything we did as a council. Because there were
I'm glad they went on board with it.
Can if you all approve it.
Okay. So, we have a motion to approve that resolution 2022-02.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Becky, a second. Doug seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Okay.
We got any texts from our families, they must have still been 11 then.
So I've got a few additional appropriations here. This was a long one. I've never had this one. Ever. Hope I got them in more.
Opposite side of what it usually is, so mark it accordingly.
Thanks.
Okay, Commissioners operating, 30, in the general fund, Commissioners Fund operating. This is the, where we talked about, they used it for the attorney, for the White Stallion. Greg was here last meeting,
Okay, yeah, right.
and you did a consensus for $30,000.
So, all in favor of that motion? Yes, I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
You may.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Charmaine made a motion. I have a second. Becky? Alex? Alex? So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Sorry, I'm just a little behind here. Okay, the next one is workman's comp insurance. Our workman's comp insurance is $7,000 negative. It was more than what we thought. We usually pay our insurance bills in February. And workman's comp, they come in, they audit, and then it either raises or it lowers depending on your payroll. And so the more we have on payroll, the more we have to pay for the insurance. So.
So that's 7,000. Did you say 7,000?
7,000.
Okay, so I need that. I'll make a motion that we approve that $7,000 for additional workman's comp.
A second.
For me, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Now the next ones are all the money that we would spend from ARPA in the general fund once we do the revenue loss. That's the ones with the stars. So,
Are those all separate?
yes, they're all separate. Sorry. And I gotta write each one down too, so.
Oh, yeah. So can I just go down the list?
Yep.
Okay, so the first one is the regional sewer phase 2, $69,250.
So moved.
Charmaine made a motion. May I have a second? Alex seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? You can look at Ken when you're ready. Okay, you're ready. Okay.
It just takes me a little bit to write
That's all
who
right.
said what.
Okay, the next one is the ARPA audit. For the federal government, it's $25,000. May I have a motion to approve the $25,000?
I'll make the motion.
Doug made a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Doug seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Now, I do want to mention, we will not move any of this money until we get our second tranche in, which should be coming in May. Because we don't want to move, we don't want to put it in there, start doing anything with it, and then not get the second half of our money.
The next one is the treasurer auditor's windows, $83,200. for a motion to approve that? I'll make a motion that we approve it. Anyone have a second? Alex seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the next one is for the Du Bois County Park, $350,000. May I have a motion to approve that?
I'll make that motion.
Craig made a motion. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Sonia seconded. All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the next one is the Northeast Du Bois Fire and Ambulance Building. About $300,000. May I have a motion to approve that? Tremaine made a motion. Doug seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So we approved an increase already. The last one I have on here is the auditor's plat book.
Yes, you notice we have the books. We sell them for the cost of the books. We're gonna pay for the books. We haven't paid for them, we haven't been invoiced yet. We're gonna pay for the books out of the general fund, and then we are collecting enough to recoup our costs, so
So that's,
So what is it for book?
$20.
so that's an amount of $4,075. May I have a motion to approve those plat books?
That's the cost of the books.
Cost of the plat books. Craig made a motion to approve. Doug seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Who did the first?
Craig and
Craig.
Doug.
Getting closer.
Old age and that arthritis just kills.
From the Cume Cap Fund. This is the ambulance that Ryan talked about last time, $350,000.
Okay. So wait. Entertain a motion for the approval of the ambulance, $350,000.
I'll move.
Craig moved for motion. Have a second?
A second.
Vicky seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
And the other one just arrived last week.
Is that right?
Finally got it this past week.
Should we go on with the sheriff's vehicle then?
Yes, this is the one that Tom talked about.
Okay, yeah. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the sheriff's vehicle for $25,000.
So moved.
Tremaine made a motion to approve. I'll second it. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm just gonna say J. If you want. Get one of those Stanford rules.
I still want that. I just like writing them out. Everybody thinks on.
Okay, we want to go on to the next one.
The
The
highway.
highway, okay, I guess for supplies, $15,000, I guess for paint, for striping or whatever.
Yep.
So I'll entertain a motion.
Is that already over budget then, or, I mean, how's it that?
I'm sorry, I don't have a whole lot of information on it.
Okay,
Probably look for it here.
I mean, like, it's only $4.
Well, I think some of those things he doesn't request until, like some of those MVH monies get moved around. I'm not sure.
They, $15,000 is the note I have. I'm sorry, I don't have a lot more in detail.
You know, they'll do like their bituminous and all that other stuff.
As they need them.
That's what I understood it too. You pull up the minutes of the last one. So,
Do you want me to call them?
so, did we have a motion to approve? Okay. We have a motion, yeah, second.
I'll second.
Doug seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay,
The next one, I do know what this Cambridge one is for. They had a vehicle that blew an engine, and it only had 100,000 miles on it, so they got a new engine in it, and now they're trying to put some money back in that repair line item for what they normally use it for.
We're moving it out of Cume Ridge.
And it's a Cambridge vehicle.
Okay. That's
I move that we approve the $17,000.
Charmaine made a motion to approve. May I have a second? Sonia seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Get behind here, Doug.
That's all right.
Community corrections.
I do have one transfer.
Clerk perpetuation.
Her perpetuation fund, she needs to move $1,076 from supplies to capital outlay so she can replace a scanner.
What's it from again?
Clerk's perpetuation fund,
Okay.
So this is the clerk.
it's from supplies to capital outlay, and they want to replace a scanner for the records library.
Entertain a motion to make that transfer.
So moved.
Charmaine made a motion. May I have a second? Becky seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Because there are other people who do not get opportunities to make bonus. And that's what's gonna happen. So,
For a number that they just kind of came up with, it wasn't substantiated by the number of hours or anything like that.
The only thing that was in Thompson was the money was paid up.
yeah.
You gotta quit, I'm out of pencil lead.
Okay, I want to bring up, this salary adjustment. I know this was only March. But, we had discussed this, and I made a little more notes here. We had the budget hearings that we went through, and we on July 11th, we reviewed all the requests from all the employees. And then we went through the discussions, and after we went through the budget hearing, we went through into the discussions in September. And at that time, there was I don't really want to go through all of them again, but I guess my point is, what's your thoughts? Are we going to do this budget year again? Do we feel that we're at where we need to be with raises and employees? So that's my question. I think we owe it to, we need to know where we're at here as a council, and Marky also, because he was involved in putting this program together. So
I got a couple thoughts. My main thought is that we have a process now, like at least there's a framework of how to go through a process in order to request a raise. If someone feels, if a department head feels like their employee is getting not fairly compensated. In the past, before we did this, it was just all case by case. It showed up on the agenda, and we heard about it at the meeting. There was no like formal way to request anything. So with that being said, I feel like we are where we should be with the salaries. And if there is something down the road, then the department head should go through human resources and maybe use some of that framework to request case by case. It would still be case by case, but at least there's some sort of a framework to do some investigating behind the scenes instead of just coming before the council right away. That's my thought.
Anybody else got a thought on it? Becky?
I'm all for it going through HR.
Okay. I mean, not through the council.
Right.
Through, okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna piggyback on Charmaine a little bit. I think we've got it where we want. We've done, how many years we've been at this, it seems like, so, and everybody had a chance to speak up last year. So I guess in my eyes, I guess I'm maybe closing it. I guess in my thought is it's closed. I don't know how anybody else can have any more complaints. I feel like they had a complaint, they had an opportunity last year. I'm not trying to, but I think if we keep it open, then it just continues.
And we'll have people applying every year.
Yeah.
I thought you couldn't do it every year. I thought you couldn't do it every year.
Right, but if we're gonna have another 15 people I think our salaries are set, that's where we're at. That's how I view it. So I agree with Charmaine, but I'm gonna take a step further and say it's not offered anymore. Maybe is how I feel.
I would say I agree with Charmaine and Becky, and Craig, really, all three. We have gone through the process how many times? I feel like everybody should be where they're at, and if there is a big issue, then they need to mark everything and go start that process. But I feel like it should probably be done where we're at. Yeah.
How would you add anything?
So you want to close it or to everybody?
But I mean,
That's
that's
kind of
what
work going both ways, like keeping it open, going through market. So
Close it.
Close it?
I think we close it as a council. I mean, if somebody has, I think you put it pretty well. I mean, if some individual has something, they go to the department head goes to market.
Yeah.
So, all right, so just show of hands, let's just have a show of hands if we're gonna eliminate this process. Okay, thank you.
So you're gonna eliminate the process?
Through us, through this, it's called a salary adjustment request.
Well, I mean, I just think closing it being open to everybody every year.
Well,
Does that make sense? I mean, I like the framework.
Yes.
I like the framework that if there truly is.
So you're gonna close what you do at budget time, where you could get 1, or you could get 20, or you could get 50.
Right, we're closing it.
And right now, if there's an issue, they should work with Mark, and then he will go through the
And
process.
it's presented, it would be presented to us at our hearings, as a council. So it should be,
So is somebody gonna work with him, or just him by himself, or?
I think it's the department head and Markey.
Okay. If Marky has questions, he can ask you, right?
Yes.
Just a few, I just wanna, I went to the IAC Budget and Finance meeting the other Tuesday. It was very good. It was about, the comprehensive planning for 5 years. I mean, it's good. It's gonna be on their website, the IAC website, after they finish all the conferences and everything. So if you really want to take a look at that, I don't want to get into it too much. Long evening already, but they are going to video. They didn't video ours, but they video the next one. So the other thing we talked about together, well, I guess that's kind of that grant. I think we probably, as a council, wouldn't. It seems like then it would be more for the health department to go after.
It is, but it has such great opportunities to do something.
It does.
That would be more than just part-time interpreter.
So, yeah, it
For their
sounds like
department.
it's something worthy to go after, it's just not for that niche.
Yeah, because I mean, there's,
Yeah, because this is more court-related
Yeah.
and a variety, but.
because if the health department's just paying for their day or day and a half, it's not worth the waste of grant on that,
Right.
put all the work into it.
Yeah,
But
you're right.
I hope Sean, I'd like to encourage Sean, because you got some areas here.
Right.
And there's, they were stressing collaborations and support letters for a reason.
Yes.
There's some good stuff going on with Community Foundation, working with our 4 school districts that health department would fit right into. There's some other areas. There's just, the health department has the DuBois County Public Health Partnerships Mental Health Committee, and they do great stuff. But Sean never attends those meetings. It's a way for them to get some working money and everything that don't have any money.
It's more, but
What's the name of that grant?
It's Together We Will.
together we will. It's an Indiana grant, and
Yeah.
the only thing is it's all minority, so, right, I mean,
Yeah, and we've got a lot of,
we do, I was looking this morning, I think we got 9.
it's perfect. I mean, we
9%.
need money in that area.
Right.
Yeah. I'd love to help on it. I really would. I mean, I was excited about it, but, and I can talk to a few different groups and we use their stats and we've got all the
I
data
think the
to
commissioners
get it going.
addressed it to me because they thought the council could kind of help with the interpreter getting funding. I mean, that's why they pushed it to me.
Yeah.
Um,
There wasn't anything in there about that would cover.
Right. I mean,
Well,
it
Well,
would
if
be-
the health department would go for it, they should get a full-time interpreter at their own facility.
Yes, exactly. Not,
Not a
But
part-time.
you may not, it's $1,000 to 75,000, so you can get, it's not like a lump sum 75,000. And businesses can do it too.
Sure.
It's churches.
and that's why they want to see collaborations. They want to see a whole community behind it
Right.
to affect the community need.
Well, thanks for looking into that too.
Yeah, Becky, I'm kind of like you. The health partnership would be the place where he needs to be working with to find a place.
But that's not on his list of priorities, let's say.
Next one
Mental health is big.
is the
Big, big, big.
is the Justice Center. It's going well, the construction and the community corrections. Megan did make some changes. They're not into her area yet, but she's asking for, I think it's like 4 more offices. They're moving things around in there. It's not any larger, same footprint, but they moved some things around. They made some offices smaller. So I think she's adding, I think it's 3 additional, I think it comes out to be maybe 3 additional offices. But it's the layout, and it's gonna cost the county, we don't have the dollars, but they're supposed to come back with some dollar, it's gonna be a cost estimate, right? And so that's and then the other thing I wanna just address, the sheriff had sent us that thing, he wanted to reclassify a lot of the jailers, create that, and I spoke with him and I asked him if he could maybe put that on the shelf until it gets closer to budget time. Then we could see where we're at a little bit and see what we want to do with he wanted to do a similar thing that he did with the deputies. So I think if he told me that we would kind of, we discussed maybe June or July that he'd come in with that, so we can maybe put something together there if we want to do it. So.
I was thinking, why doesn't he just put it in, work on it for next year's budget?
Right, that I think, I
Because
wanted
we're
to
getting, right there, we're getting away from what we just said then,
right,
what we just agreed on.
so, that's a good point. That's what I wanted him to come up and I didn't want to address it at this time because it's not something, we didn't know what we were going to do with that. But I think it is more of a budget, budget thing, so. And then that airport loan, I guess, is coming due in November this year,
They have not borrowed anything yet.
Oh, good.
1.5 million.
They've not taken the first draw.
I'm so glad that they didn't have to, for them.
So, anyone else? That's my points that I wanted to address.
They want to say that they're, you know,
If you have any issue or want to speak, or
What, regarding that $12,000 and that $5,000 bonus, what other avenues could they actually use that $12,000, or is that just gonna get rolled right back up to state funds and they're just gonna lose that?
that I don't know, I thought about that, but I think it seems like there'd be something they could shift around in there and use it.
Usually that's what happens at the end. She'll propose changing around and the state will approve some of that. Sometimes not, it just depends.
And that's something that's ended. We don't get that money anymore, do we? Or is that ongoing?
The drug court? Which
Yeah,
one are you talking
asked
about?
for that?
That was the DOC grant, that case.
Oh, the CRRP grant. You're talking about the bonus CRRP that he did not spend, then it's probably gone because it's probably last year. I don't know. I don't know where that number came from. So it's hard for me to.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is if that money is just gonna go straight up to the state at the end of the budget cycle, or if you don't have any kind of way to spend it, I mean, to me, it seems pretty clear. We have somebody in Du Bois County that did extra work to make sure an office was up and running, and a judge didn't have to step in to be the case manager for the full time. I get that some public employees in the county aren't eligible to receive benefits or bonuses like that. But that to me seems like wrong, and then somebody else doing this work and not being able to get paid for it seems like wrong. So two wrongs to me don't seem like right. I'm in disagreement. I don't think you guys handled that correctly. I would have asked her, try to find some other way that you could use that money. Because if it's not going to be spent on anything.
Well, I appreciate your input that, decisions made. So the next meeting is April 25th at 4:30. So if there's any other comments from the council? So,
Move we adjourn.
maybe second? Alex seconded, so all in favor say aye.
Did Alex second that?
Yes.
And not you, Doug?
I'm gonna throw a wrench in your.
I know, now I can copy and paste.
Don't worry, I may come back.
Are we still voting this week? Did it start?
We're in the final four going up to the.
I've been doing my share, I just didn't realize it was today, and you were allowed to. I tried to.
Going today, yeah, spread the word.
You asked.
Again, it's the same